What's up, man?
Hi Lee, how you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. How's your week been?
My week has been busy, so good in other words.
Yeah. Well, I feel
Yeah.
you.
No, nice week. It's finally getting a little cooler here in Georgia, as you know, because we're both Georgia people. So
I think you might be the first Georgia guest, if I'm not mistaken, and it's due time, man.
yeah, no, I was excited when I saw that you were from Atlanta. So guess we
Well,
got that in common.
no, I think it's cool too that you live a little outside of Statesboro now, but I mean,
Yeah.
I went to college at Georgia Southern, so
Oh, no way.
I spent a good 5 years there, so I know Statesboro inside and out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we lived down there on College Street, right by the post office, and then
Okay.
yeah. So, but then we just moved out to Sylvania a couple months ago. So that's where we are now. It's kind of the middle of nowhere, but that's kind of how I like it. So
But what, maybe an hour away from Savannah, and Savannah's got a lot of culture and art, and maybe
yeah.
you
Well,
get your fix, you know.
yeah. So I mean, it's nice because we go into. I mean, it's only about a half hour away from Statesboro, so we
Hmm.
go into Statesboro for all sorts of stuff, and then if I want to like actually do anything, I'll go into Savannah, Atlanta occasionally, but obviously that's a little bit further. It's like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's really not that bad either. Yeah, man. Remember really getting into a deep thought driving on 16 because it's just a straight shot, and then
Yeah.
your mind kind of just starts going, you know.
Oh man, yeah. 16 is a bit of a nightmare right now. They got a lot of construction
Oh,
going on
really?
there. Yep, they're building that big Hyundai plant there too. So it's kind of looks like a apocalyptic landscape right now.
So basically, that'll bring in a lot of like jobs and workers, and that's kind of what you
Yeah,
were talking to me backstage about.
yeah. That's why we ended up moving. We wanted to actually we were we'd been in an apartment for a while, and we were like we want to actually get a house. So we were like, even Statesboro, it was hard to get one right now because of all that. So
Wow.
and it's not even here yet. So we ended up going out to Sylvania, which about population 2,000. So it's pretty small, but we don't really do anything here besides be in our house here. So
I feel you. Did you grow up in Georgia or
no,
like?
yeah, no. So my wife and I were both from different parts. She's from the Midwest. I'm from Portland metro area, Pacific Northwest, Oregon,
Okay.
and we, she got a job in Statesboro, and we wound up here. So, yep,
Because I was like,
yeah,
yeah, that's kind of crazy
it,
living in Statesboro. It's the last place I'd expect.
yeah. Well, and it's funny. It's like a lot of people, just because I'm 26, so like a lot of people always thought I was a student living there, and I'd be like, no,
Yeah.
I'm okay. Let's. I'm not like it's okay. Y'all are cool. I'm just like I'm not going to class. I promise. I'm just going to the grocery store. Yeah.
Might be the youngest guest I've had too. I didn't realize you were 26. That's cool.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I guess to kind of like start off with things like that's something I was actually very like. I've really only been doing this for the past like professionally for the past like 4 years,
Yeah.
and that's something I was very kind of self conscious about in the
Hmm.
beginning because I just thought people like wouldn't take me seriously. So I didn't really show my face a lot. I didn't really talk or anything. I would just kind of sit behind the wall of like just the artwork. But over time, I've just found that being a little more personable with people, I don't know, it kind of brings the best out in both people. So I don't
Yeah.
know. And then at the same time, I kind of thought like, well, it's like you've had Mark Riddick on. I mean, he started when he was pretty
Yeah.
young
18,
too.
19.
Yeah, exactly. So I started looking at artists like that, and I was like, you know what? Shut up. Just be out there, do your thing, and I don't know. I think it's cool because then there's other artists who are either my age or younger who are a little more encouraged to try and get into this stuff. So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's awesome. It's funny because then there's the stories of other people who've been on the show. That are friends now, like Lucas with Shoggoth Kinetics. I mean, he really went to art school at 30. So it's almost like it's pretty abstract, just, and there's no Goldilocks age, you know what I mean?
No.
Like you might think you're too young, but then other people think they're too old. So it's kind of funny that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny too, because like we don't, like, most of our friends aren't in their 20s; they're in their 30s or 40s. So
Yeah.
we're always kind of, and it's cool that they don't kind of view my wife and I as like children just walking around and stuff. I think it's cool, especially like in this community. It's like there's people of literally all ages. You got some bands that are it's 18, 19-year olds who are exploding just off of, like, I don't know, their first couple releases. And yeah, I think that's cool, so.
Well, and it's also interesting too, because like, and I'm not this way, but I know some, metal fans and stuff. It's like if they're not of a certain age, they're just automatically deemed like not true or posers or whatever. And it seems so stupid to me, because the artists' albums that you love were when they were younger. So it's like, what's the point in that? And you really don't win. But then, younger bands, I do think that helps out with the next generation getting into metal and stuff. Like I saw Cannibal Corpse on Friday with Gorguts, Blood Incantation, and Mayhem. And dude, it was a packed house at the Eastern, and there was a lot of people of all ages. And it's just reassuring to see, because you got to get that young blood. There's the people that watch that make it lively,
Yeah, I know. I'm so bummed. I had put that on my calendar, and then I just like never got tickets for it. That's what happens half the time with Atlanta shows. It's like I got to drive there and drive back the same night, so it's like
you got to prep.
Yeah, you got to really. It's hard to do things on a whim, and then of course just craziness. But that lineup was crazy. So I was like, damn. Yeah, no, but kind of what you're saying, with just, I think that, like you said about the younger like artists, like, I mean, look at the Cavaleras. Like those first two EPs that they did came out. I mean, how old were they? They were like, I think they were even younger than that. It was like what, 16, something like that.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, no. And now they just, re-recorded them and they sound awesome. And
yeah,
it's so cool to see that. And I think what you were saying too is like, with the fear of like, how some people will see younger artists as like, they're not true or something like that. I think that was sort of the sentiment that I had projected maybe a little too much onto other people, even if they didn't think that, and how they would see me coming into this. So there's probably a lot of people I worked with early on who just didn't even like know anything about me. And that's kind of what I wanted to keep it. That's how I wanted to keep it. But it's just refreshing, because like really people don't actually most of the time care about that. It's just kind of the people who are a little stuck up about what should be. And I personally, I don't really have an idea of what should or shouldn't be in terms of standards, as long as everyone's safe and happy and likes the music they like. So no,
I'm with you. And the earlier point you made too about like kind of putting yourself out there, I mean, that's kind of what this year has been for me, is like, okay, putting myself out there, trying to meet people, network. And this is, it's a kind of a collaborative, right? People kind of come back on the show, do panels and stuff. But I don't know, part of it was just based off of like last year around October. That's when I first saw like some of that Mid-Journey stuff that was like, okay, this is actually legit. This isn't just a joke anymore. Like this stuff could pass as like, I know. and dude, it drives me insane. So I'm like, how are artists supposed to compete? Yes, technically keep getting better at your craft and all that stuff, but you got to emphasize the human. So put yourself out there. Like, part of it is at the end of the day, somewhat of a business move. Like, okay, if because I know personally, there are artists that might not be the best in the world, but if I really like their personality, what they have to say, I will support them. So do it,
Absolutely. And I think, that's why, I mean, you can't listen to a program talk about their work. You know what I mean? And that's what's so cool about this, and what's been cool about, the guests you've been having and stuff like that is, it's the experience of working together collaboratively with a band is, they're really good at what they do and you're really good at what you do. And when you bring those two together, you bring two different perspectives to it. And unfortunately, with generative AI and stuff like that, the perspective is kind of gone because you get something unexpected. And sure, you could say you get something unexpected with something a program puts out. And don't get me wrong, like you have to admit it looks cool. Like, of course it looks cool, but there's nothing behind it, and that's what freaks me out. And I don't want to get too much on tangents on AI because everything's been said.
I get you.
I absolutely detest it, and I'm sure you do too. But what's cool about, and this is something, and I have a huge tendency to just ramble tangent. So
that's the point of the show. Man.
Okay, cool. I'm happy to be here. So, no, basically, that's one of the big reasons I started kind of showing my process and stuff and putting that out there. Is I was like, okay, I present just because I don't even like sell a lot of my originals, even though I work traditionally. I hoard a lot of them.
Yeah.
And what most people, their impression of my stuff is just it's an image they see on their phone most of the time. So, and the programs, they can create that too. So I was like, I need to show the blood, sweat, and tears that go into the creation of this process and how we get there. And, to me, that's kind of, it's brought the best part, I think, out of myself. And it's actually helped get my work out there more because people are surprisingly interested in the process. I thought it was a crazy, just totally batshit, you don't need to be doing this process, but
that's why it's interesting,
Yeah,
different.
But again, you don't get that perspective unless you work with someone. So that's, and that's why you always have to appreciate the bands that work with you so much, is because they're going out of their way to basically get that perspective from you. So, you got it. I'm no matter what the experience is like working with a band, I'm grateful in the first place that they actually bothered to reach out and want to work with me. Because half the time I'm like, how did you even find me? Like, I have stuff out there, but I don't have nearly the catalog that some of these artists do. So it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing, that whole collaboration and being open about the process. So that's what I love about it.
You have your own style though too. That's the thing that I really love about your work is as I've been digging through, I can look and I'd be like, yep, that's Noah. And that's such an important aspect too. And I think part of it's the process, but it's also just your creative vision. You really can't replicate that.
Yeah. And, I guess if you want to dive in kind of on the process a little bit,
sure.
It's a weird thing because how that style developed, I feel like there's a lot of artists who really try to really hone in, this is my style. I'm trying to calculate a style. You know what I mean? And you really can't do that. Really, how you get your style is you just keep doing stuff and it'll eventually develop, because that's the you part. And unfortunately, like you said, with the AI stuff, that's what's missing is the person in there is just gone because it's an amalgamation of a bunch of other people's stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the more you just hone what you do, and again, I'm really happy with how far I've come, but I'm only 26. I don't know where it's going to go from here. And I think that's the exciting part is everyone's a work in progress, no matter how distinct it actually looks. You know what I mean? And I think that's cool.
Yeah, it's a good point because I was watching an interview the other day with John Baisley of Baroness, and he's a visual artist as well.
Yeah, Savannah too.
Yeah, huge fan of his work. If for some reason watching, love to have you on the show. Side plug, but he was talking about how the things that he perceives as his own flaws are really what make the art unique, or the sound of Baroness. You're talking about music in particular at the time, and it is interesting because I do feel like sometimes I catch myself being really calculated, but like it always seems to end up still looking like my stuff. But it's like, oh, I want to channel this type of etching technique this time, or I want to, I'm really into this particular artist, so I'll like let it rub off on me, hopefully a little way. But it's a push and pull, because if you want to get better as well, you have to study and be very intentional about your practice. But at the same time, you also just get better by doing stuff in your own way. It's almost like you go up, then you plateau for just a little bit, then you go up again, you plateau. Like that's how it feels like for me, like trying to improve.
Yeah. And that's, I don't think you're ever not going to be you when you make something, even if you try to like do something in the vein of something else. It's that's the whole point, is like, that's how you develop that. I think a big misnomer about what people say about like, well, all art is stealing, so what's wrong with this new stuff? You know what I mean? And it's not stealing. It's the fact that you put that one part of you with it, with that other part that you're influenced by, and the amalgamation of those is what makes something new, because it is still something new. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
It's not just, oh, I recreated something in this style, because you're always going to have that part of you that imbues with it. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
So when you talk to me a little bit about like kind of your artistic development and kind of where you got to like this stuff. And the other thing I find interesting is, so you've been doing professionally 4 years. That means you were 22 when you were starting to get like, some paid gigs and stuff, which is really freaking cool. But maybe even just start at like kind of childhood and into middle school, high school, all that kind of shit.
Yeah. So I mean, when I was a kid, like, I feel like there was always some sort of weird like influence, because my dad had a lot to do with it, because my dad is actually a part-time magician. So
Nice.
and he still does it. He does like kids shows and stuff right now. But when I was a kid, I was escaping from mailbags and like putting my head in a box and getting a bunch of swords put into it and stuff. This is when I was like, I'm like 10 or 11. When I'm doing.
You're the assistant, huh?
Yeah, no, and they, he'd make me levitate and stuff at shows for like Boy Scouts and stuff. It was, so there was that kind of weird influence early on, and I don't even, I didn't like continue on with that really, but he also got me into like, I have kind of a specific memory of we were at my grandma's house where he grew up. And we went up to the attic, and he got a bunch of his old stuff from when he was my age. And he was really into like, this is 70s. So he was really into like, the Universal monsters and things like that. He had this book. Oh, there go my cats again.
How many cats do you have?
2. Walter and Eileen. They were born in April. They're named after 2 characters from Silent Hill 4.
Brother and sister?
Yep.
Nice.
So they love each other, but they just knocked a shelf off of... I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem.
Guys.
I know the feeling. I'm surprised my dog isn't moaning right now.
Okay.
All good. Under control?
They're always out of control. They're toddlers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so, they just knocked this little guy off, which maybe I'll talk about him later. One of my early creations.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, you can still hear me all right?
Oh, yeah, you're perfect, yeah.
Cool. So, when it started off, so he kind of got me into all that stuff, but he had all this stuff in my grandma's attic still. And there was this book. I don't remember the name of it. I recently found it again in a kind of like horror store, but it's just simply called Horror Movies. I'll need to find who it was written by, but it was that and a lot of the like Forrest Ackerman type books. And it was basically, it was all like the classic stuff. It only, I think, went up to the 60s. So, it was mostly black and white classics. I got Phantom behind me, which is probably one of the most influential images in my entire, psyche, and
Nice.
therefore career. But yeah, no, it's cool. And the other thing he had, and you told me to bring props, so I brought props.
Yeah, please.
Another thing he had, which this is, I don't know if anyone watching knows their Monster Mask history, but this is a 1970 something Don Post Studios Karloff Frankenstein. And
here, hold on 1 second. There we go. Now you're bigger.
Yeah, there you go. So look at that. Yeah. This is just something we had in our house growing up, because he had a bunch of others like Phantom, Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, but that, the latex, it just doesn't last forever, so they all cracked and broke apart. So I kind of got into like the monster masks and stuff like that. And at around the same time, I started going to the library because I wanted to get like more, books on like horror and similar
and
things.
You're still like 12, 13. You're pretty young at this point.
Yeah. So at that same time, and obviously, that's something that continued, and it's actually kind of where I started career-wise, was more that area. But around the same time, so I started going to the library, and I wanted to get more books like this. And I would go to the library, and I would get like, I started getting those, and then eventually I started getting like graphic novels. Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein was a huge one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
One of the best.
Yeah, that image of the monster in the rain has always like, that was one of those things that I saw, and I was like, okay, like this is it. Like I want to do stuff like this. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it was that, and then eventually I started browsing their, and I would get like VHS tapes of like older movies and stuff like that, and because I wanted to like kind of build I love these books, and I loved all the monsters in them, so I wanted to watch these movies. So I was basically going down the list of these books and being like, all right, I'm going to try and rent this from the library. I'm going to try and rent this from the library. So it was going into all the various like spin-offs of the Wolfman and Mummy and things like that. And then around that time, I was like, all right, well, I should start browsing maybe the music too. So I started getting CDs at the same time, and, getting CDs from the library and burning them on your computer to get free music.
I remember the time, yeah.
Yeah. So, because, when I was, obviously, my age when I was younger, basically, this is like the rise of like iTunes. And that, so it was a lot of mostly just shitty MP3s. I wasn't exactly blessed with the best period of time quality wise, but I was able to kind of widen my gamut by doing that. And I started out, and it was like classic rock, things like that, but obviously the big game changer, which I feel like is for so many people, was Black Sabbath. I rented from the library because my dad, he was also, musically we don't cross a lot of paths, but he always loved Paranoid. It's one of, he always loved that song and that album. So I got that, and it was cool, but I also got their debut, which was like the freakiest. That cover is like, it was so, I don't know, there's something
haunting.
It's terrifying. I did a tribute to it a couple years ago when it turned 50, and where I drew like, the devil in the woods, like pointing, and
nice.
But it just kind of, I don't know, it was cool to kind of bring back those emotions of seeing that and hearing it for the first time, because I think anyone can agree, when you first hear that opening song, however old you are, I was probably 12 when I heard it. Mm-hmm. And it was like, well, again, this is it. This is, I just want everything to be like this. Because there's the element of what you're enjoying is dangerous, and I was, my parents, they pretty Christian, so we were always going to church and stuff like that.
Yep.
So while they were like, oh yeah, Paranoid, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna listen to this evil music in secret, and I started doing that a lot, and I eventually got into like, I mean, because so everything comes from Black Sabbath basically. It's like, I eventually started getting like, yeah, obviously Dio. I don't know, anything that had devils on it, because that was the fun part. That was the fun part of church, is like talking about all the evil stuff. So,
oh yeah, I can relate.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, all that stuff. Sabbath turned into Dio, turned into Metallica, turned into Slayer, turned into, and eventually it's Deeds of Flesh and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, no.
Well, I gotta ask, like, so you're younger than me, but you have like older tastes than me. Like, what was it like with like your friend group? Were they like, this guy's kind of odd, loving all this like stuff from the 60s and the 70s? Because it is interesting that, not only just the movies, but the music was very rooted in, tradition.
Yeah. It's weird because I've always kind of had I always like, whenever I get into an artist, I'm like, okay, start from the beginning and see how they've evolved. And I think that's how a lot of people work. But I was kind of I was like that with everything, even as a kid, with movies, we started with silent movies, it was Phantom, Nosferatu, all that good stuff. And then it was the same with music. I was like, all right, I guess I just happened to start on, like Sabbath. And eventually it turned into, I had a huge punk phase in high school where I only listened to punk rock, and I was an asshole. And, I want to go back and just punch that kid in the face so hard. But that also led to like Misfits as well, which kind of had that. And it's like my mom just hated them. She thought they were just the worst thing in the world. But Danzig and Misfits is just like, that ended up being one of my biggest influences, because obviously you got Giger, and eventually I was like, oh, this has a Giger cover, and then, oh look, Celtic Frost also has a Giger cover, and then all of a sudden it just, I don't know, everything blossomed from like starting early and then building up. I always like to go through the years. I love evolution. I think that's the thing. I love just the concept of, this is where things started and how they are the way they are now. So
yeah,
I've always wanted to put that effort in to like see, you know what I mean? It's to see where things have come from and how they get to where they are, and everything in between is is just as good as the start and the finish, because we're never going to be finished, So yeah,
100%.
And it's hard to even say where anything ever starts too, because look at your influences, then look at their influences, and then look at their influences, and that's how you build that gamut. So as a kid, a lot of people were like, okay, like I had a Discman that I would listen to like Killers and Rain and Blood and stuff on in middle school. So I got made fun of for listening to a Discman because people were listening on iPods. So
I was pretty late to get in the iPod game too. I remember, I have a distinct memory of being in gym class, and you were able to like kind of sneak music while you're doing the laps, like running around the gym. I remember having sweatpants. I had to hold onto my sweatpants because I had the Discman jammed into my pocket. So I'm like running around and like my pants like falling down. I'm listening to Children of Bodom. It was
another
that
big
was
one.
huge, at our time. So did you skip the whole new metal and metalcore and all that, or was that kind of that's always kind of there? But then the stuff that's really stuck with you is maybe the old school stuff.
Yeah. I mean, no, I've kind of tried to get my fingers in everything. New metal, obviously new metal and metalcore was big at that time. So it was something I wasn't as into, because I was like, metalcore never quite registered with me. I don't want to say I hate it. It's just not my favorite,
I feel you.
So I just don't really lean towards it. And then new metal, in middle school, I liked new metal a little bit, like in middle school, because I was just pissed off And
Well, it's it was
yeah,
man, it was a whole different time, and
yeah,
it was those are like the gateway bands, So
yeah, and it
for,
is,
for
and
me,
absolutely. So again, there are bands that I like, and there's bands I like less, but at the same time, I'm never gonna like rag on anyone for liking another type of music. I mean, I would have in high school when I only listened to punk rock,
yeah,
but I was 15 and a dick. So um so the fact that sometimes you see like, 50-year-olds acting that way, it's like, okay,
yeah.
but
Maturity kind of
yeah.
stopped.
Yeah, no, it's I just because I think like I don't care how you get into stuff, and I think everything you find along the way is part of the building blocks. So, who cares? It's cool. New metal, yeah.
100%.
I can't say I've always like loved new metal. I really liked System of a Down
Okay,
because
yeah.
they're just one of the like when I first listened to them. I mean, even now, compared to even other new metal bands, they're just so fucking weird.
Very unique. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I always kind of looked for that, like, well, what's the one that sticks out? And that was always one to me. And I liked Slipknot you know, and then Deftones and stuff like that. But
Yeah. Some have held up more than others, I'd say. Yeah. Like,
yeah. So I mean, recently I haven't. It's just been a long time since I've listened to it. So but at the same time, you're always ripe for trying to jump back into stuff that you loved a long time ago. So I recently that happens all the time. Every year, it's like there's a band I haven't listened to in 10 years, and I just only listen to them for a month. It's a really beautiful thing when that happens. So
it is. It's
who
a
knows?
different experience than finding new music.
Well, especially like 10 years ago, I was 16. So looking at it as a kid in high school versus now, it's like a working professional, like being in this area. It's cool. It's it's special. It really is.
So, what about drawing and art then? When did you start even just casually doing it and to take it more seriously?
Yeah. So when I was, it's hard to say like when I actually started drawing because I think I was just, as you just always been doing it.
Yeah.
I feel like any artist I've talked to, and I don't know if you're this way too, but like you can't remember a time where you weren't doing it.
Most cases, I'd say that's accurate.
Yeah.
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 For me, it definitely is. I've been drawing since I was like 3.
Yeah, no. So it's like I'm a kid and I'm drawing dragons, and then I'm drawing like comic book. Like I loved Green Goblin. I liked drawing Green Goblin a lot. it was like a year where I only drew the Green Goblin. As I was probably like I don't know, probably like 10. And yeah, no. So and then from there, I like in high school, I stopped for a couple years because I wanted to do music, and I was like, I'm focusing on the music, and it's like a little bit of a waste of time, but not really, because I ended up meeting a lot of people, and
I had a similar experience.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, I'm shifting what I want to do. Like, I like music. I'm really into music, so I'm gonna make music, and it's like, I felt like I had to do that, and I enjoyed it, and it was fun, but I have no real desire to do it now. Maybe I will, and that'd be cool. But I ended up actually like there's some bands that I work with like all the time now that I made friends with them when I was playing with them in high school. So
yeah,
it's so cool when that happens. It's like now we're really like I don't know, we've really honed our paths, and it's so cool that we spent like a decade apart, and then we come together, and that's awesome.
It kind of feels like you're giving back,
Yeah, I mean, there's a band that I work with. It feels like constantly because most things I've worked with them haven't even been released yet and won't be released for a little bit. But Asatus or Asatus, being down here, I've over time sometimes the accents have rubbed off on me, and I'll end up saying Asatus. So Asatus, I don't know. Gage from Asatus says Asatus when he talks to me, and we have our little video calls. So, but we met when we were in like a music program together, and we met when we were in high school, maybe even middle school. I don't remember. But him, and then I grew up with Travis, which is another member of their band. He lived down the street from me, and or in the same neighborhood, maybe not down the street, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, no, I knew most of those guys back then, not well, but we were friendly with each other, and we would occasionally do stuff together. And then years later, Gage reaches out to me and is like, "Hey, we really love these few pieces of yours. Can we use them as single covers, and then can we commission you to do an album cover?" And that's False Peace. That's this album right here. So,
oh yes, love that one.
Yeah. So, and they're going strong. They're working on a ton of stuff. Gage is the kind of guy who just like constantly commissions artwork from me and is like, "Well, we're gonna use it for something," which is
I'm stockpile.
Yeah, honestly, I have lost track of how many. I mean, their next. He's given me permission to talk about this, even though we haven't. He hasn't shown anything from it yet. They play some of the songs live, so I guess whatever. But I mean, I think we have 8 pieces for the next album right now.
For like booklet and stuff?
Maybe. I mean, I'll probably do the layout, so who knows? But yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, because we're like, well, we want one for each song. And then eventually that turned into, well, maybe we won't use this one we used for this song for that song. We'll just use it for the back or the front, and now we need another piece for that song. So that's been happening for the last year, because I think I started working on that album in March maybe of last year, and I finished up like a bunch of pieces in like by the end of July. And then this year he's just been like, maybe we need another, and then maybe we need another. So, and I really appreciate that. He's a real good friend of mine, but he's also a patron. So, and it's cool and I'm always appreciative of it, because he said they don't want to use any other artists, which is, I think, a cool thing when, there's an artist you work with and you kind of help build their visual identity over several releases. So,
yeah, I always love it when there's like that partnership between a band and a visuil artist.
Yeah, Vince Locke. I mean, you're just talking about Cannibal Corpse. That was one that stuck out to me as a kid. It's like, I want to make fucked up shit like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always saw that and I was like, oh man, wouldn't that be sick? And it's like, well, now I kind of get to do that with one band. So it's fun. It's fun. And it just to have that trust is to know that they trust you like that. That's kind of the coolest thing, So,
yeah. So then when you were like coming back to art after exploring music a little bit, like, I guess I'm trying to figure out the path to how you found this very unique process. And, a lot of times it's just drawing pen and ink to start, and then people start to experiment with paint. Yep.
But that's it, basically.
Yeah.
That's it. In high school, I almost exclusively drew with like Sharpies, and I got tired of drawing with Sharpies, and I had a art class teacher who, she's one of the most game-changing people in my life. She was just at my wedding in January.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, she's wonderful. She was like, you need to work with color. Like, you needed to try working with color, because I never colored anything. I only never did black and white, and now I don't like doing black and white. So, it was cool because then I worked exclusively with oil pastels, which is hard to get a lot of detail.
Yeah.
I even
kind of smudgy,
yeah, which I like, because I think when it comes to like my style, I really like to use the word like visceral. There's a lot of just the texture, there's a ton of viscera in the texture. It's kind of, it can be glamorous at the same time, which I love, but it's all about that, visceral effect. So how I kind of got there, though, like you said, you look at other artists, you try out what they do, and you do that over and over and over again, and you find what you hate and you find what you like. And I feel like at some point I did only digital, And that is, I don't get me wrong, I'm no purist. I love digital artists, and I think digital art's awesome. And I still do it now. A lot of merch designs I do are digital, but because color separation. Yeah. But I did a lot of digital, and then I was like, oh, I want to do like flat graphic stuff, or I want to do, which I, believe it or not, had a phase where I only did that. And then, I have a tendency to wipe this stuff from like my website and, my social media, because I like showing what I have now.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but I was doing that and it just wasn't getting me. Like, I just wasn't scratching the itch. I think it's a matter of, over time, it's like I just tried technique after technique, and I'm like, this just doesn't. I still have this tickle that I can't itch. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And eventually, so to kind of get into the process of like how I get the look I get, which I was honestly, I feel like it was, I don't want to say discouraged, but it's like, to do it for illustration purposes. For fine arts, like just making crazy stuff, it works great. But for actually because illustration is a service.
Right.
It's a design service, just as graphic design is a design service. You want to keep them happy the whole way through, so you can't just say. I mean, some people do this, and that's their terms, and that's cool. And I wish I could do this, but they'll be like, hey, you get what you get, but with me, I really like to constantly be along the way and say, hey, like, obviously we do sketch and stuff like that, and then final, but what I landed on was the acrylic monoprint is the basis for almost everything I do. I'm sure over time I'll kind of branch into other stuff, but I love the multi, the kind of mixed media, extremely backwards nature of the mono. Yeah, there you go. So this is, I'll go in a little bit about kind of how this works. And I've got a lot of videos on it on my Instagram. So if anybody watching wants,
these are just screenshots from that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, this is for Realms of Death. Who, again, amazing fucking people. I love them so much. Yeah, so I get a ton of questions on this, so this will be really good to clear the air. Let me actually get my monoprint plate just so I have it with me. I have like 5 of these, but so I start basically on plexiglass. Well, okay. Every time I think I'm starting talking about starting the process, I'm like, okay, you need to go one step back and then one step back. But so when I start out, I've got a drawing. You see, this is for Spiritworld. I did this for the.
Okay, yeah, I love that design.
Yeah, thank you. Cactifixion. It's Jesus crucified on a cactus. So
Classic.
So after the sketch phase and everything, obviously, which you get I do digital sketches because I'm not going to waste my time. It's so I can rework stuff easily.
Right.
But I always do digital sketches, and then basically I just take that digital sketch, and once it's approved by the band or client or what have you, I'll go in and I will get a good tight drawing of it. And this doesn't really look tight, and you can kind of see it on the Realms of Death thing as well. But this is double-sided because I accidentally did it backwards.
I've been there.
Yeah,
sketch paper.
Yeah, this is just newsprint. I just have a massive thing of newsprint because these get thrown away most of the time.
Cheap, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll start with this, and we'll get a drawing down. I say tight drawing, but really it's just so I get the shapes and colors in there. Most of the time I don't even. Yeah, and most of the time I don't even actually get the colors. I don't draw with colored pencil like this. I just thought it would be easy. This is the only time I've actually ever done it. I just thought it would be easy. It's the only one I haven't thrown out. So, yeah, I get that. You got to do it backwards because it's a print, Remember, if everything time you press for a print, it's going to be in reverse. So I do that, tape it to the back of this printing plate, which has the design printed on it, as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go in with acrylics. You got to do it fast, too, because acrylics, as anyone will know, it dry ridiculously fast. You go in and you just paint in layers. You got to hinge paper to it, by the way. You make a little faux hinge with masking tape, and then one little piece at a time, you just paint on piece by piece by piece, and then you build up those textures. And the cool part about it is, they're totally unpredictable. And that's why you get the tight drawing in there, is because I am giving the client what they want. I'm giving them what I said I was going to draw. There you go. This is much better.
Well, I like going between the props. The props are helpful. I like it.
Yeah, cool. But you're giving them what they want. You're giving them what you promised them. But there's all this extra good stuff and detail that you never could have predicted. Because say what you will, maybe it's a spiritual thing, but you just leave it up to the textural gods or whatever. Oh. And and I know
the feeling I do it, but with watercolor.
Yeah,
you
gotta
lose it a bit.
Yeah, it's the randomness. It's why I kind of got tired of doing digital stuff, and maybe I'll go into a little bit about the digital, because I do this digitally too, in the kind of in the same way. But so you get those layers of paint in there, and then you have the raw print. You see that third picture right there. You can kind of see how I'm doing it. I'm just spraying it with water in that first one. People always say, "What fluid?" It's water. It's literally water and acrylics. There's nothing more to it. And you just paint on a little bit at a time, because it dries real fast. So you paint a little bit, press. Paint a little bit, press. And eventually, when you're happy with it, you wind up with that third image there, which technically isn't like the final one, but that's the one I included. You can kind of see on the last one there the close-up detail of those textures.
You're kind of rubbing like colored pencil over it, right?
Yeah. And so basically, you wind up with this really crazy textural, calculated but random image, and then you can just go and choose to tighten the areas you want with colored pencil. And I use color. I used to use pastel, but messy. So colored pencil, and then eventually, you wind up with this. So
cool.
It looks, you saw the plate a second ago, and it's starting. Let me get that. Put them side by side. And this isn't totally accurate because it's transparent, but kind of see those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, like you're saying, reversed.
Yeah, you got to do it reverse. So it's kind of crazy. I got to pull up my reference on my computer of the sketch, and I got to flip it around, and so it's kind of this backwards way of like you end up doing it. You end up making the final image like 3 times, because you do the sketch, and then you do the monoprint, and then you draw the final. So, like you said, it's kind of about getting lost and finding it along the way. And I think that's how I wind up with this look that I'm really happy with. And I think like I said, that process is maybe what's drawn some people to it, is sort of that journey. And that's why I like to record it. I like to put it out there, because I think it's important that, people see that there is a lot that goes into this. And sure, I could do it faster, and I could probably do it faster digitally, or I could do it faster even just by painting it. But I like to do it this way because I enjoy the, sounds cliche, but the journey of it all, Yeah. So that for that, So that for that right there, I actually have that piece as well, the Realms of Death one. Let me grab it. I brought all their stuff out because they're just, that was such a fun collection that we did. Yeah. So here's the final on that you were just looking at.
So cool.
Yeah.
I got a question. So when you're doing acrylic, because it does dry really quick, are you mixing like a pretty big, not pile, but like a big like batch of it to then get on there, or using a lot of like, you're not mixing the paint, you're just kind of doing it maybe on the paper? Or tell me a little bit about that, I guess, because I don't work with acrylic a lot, but since it dries real quick, I imagine there's always a little bit of that. Almost feels like, in board games when you have the hourglass, knowing that you're playing with.
Oh, it is. And honestly, it can be frustrating because you'll get, I'll get ahead of myself, and I'll be like, all right, sweet, I got this awesome paint layer that I did, and then this much shows up because most of it dried by the time I'm done. I'm like, fuck, you know?
Yeah.
So you'll have to, that's why I do like around 50 or so print layers every time.
Wow.
So sometimes, yeah, but it sounds like it takes forever, but it really doesn't, because like you said, you're against the clock. So you got to do these things fast. And that way you don't really get bogged down on the detail because you do so many little details at the same time. But what you said about paint mixing, half the time I go straight from the tube. So it's like I'll spray the surface, I'll get a wet brush, and I'll just squirt a little bit out on the tube, and I'll put it right on there. I shoot myself in the foot because when I do yellow, I always use gold reflective paint. Mm-hmm. So, as you're able to see in the pallid veil back there, that's a lot of that is reflective paint, and I shoot myself in the foot because I have to go in and I have to fix it digitally half the time. So, but I like the look. So, what can you do? Yeah. So you do have to mix paint sometimes, but I don't know. When I can do it straight from the tube, I'll just do it straight from the tube. I use cheap stuff. I use Hobby Lobby brand because that's all I got near me. Yeah, I think Master's Touch it's called. I don't know. Or Liquitex Basics if I'm getting fancy. It is not about the like there was a phase where I was doing oils and I was just like I don't have the patience for this. So
I've never tried oils. I'm semi-intimidated by it.
Yeah, they're cool, but there's all the mediums you got to use, and you got to like I don't know. It feels like a lot of chemistry to me, and I'm just this process is so backwards that it's like to go back, and when I first started experimenting with it, to tell myself that you're going to use this for most of your jobs is like, are you sure about that? Like, how do you predict what you do? And it's like, you figure it out. There's always a way you can kind of figure it out to mix that in there with, I don't know, the work. You bring the two together, and I wasn't even so sure about it. Yeah.
Was there an artist that you learned this process from? Because I just not really familiar with. I'm not very knowledgeable on printmaking or. I've done like one or two lino cuts like in high school, and I love that stuff, but I never went back to it, or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, it's the mono print is kind of like it's just such a bootleg type of print because you can't reproduce it. It's just the one. It's just so you get the textures on that one surface. I did some lino cuts. I kind of experimented with that too in high school because it was like, all right, we're doing lino cuts.
That was just fun, just carving away at that rubber slab. Yeah,
you cut yourself a bunch though, so it's like I remember I literally cut through this on my hand when I did that, and I was like,
oh damn,
it was a nightmare. Yeah, it sucked. But with printmaking, I don't know much about other types of printmaking. This is such a like, I think I know what I'm doing, and I've just done it so many times now that I'm not a master printmaker by any means, which is why, because I don't have the patience or the precision for lino cut. If I were to show you any of my sketches, they're just scribbles. I half the time I can't even tell what I'm drawing. So this is a process where I do it slowly, a little bit at a time, and then eventually it reveals itself. Yeah. And it is me doing it, but it kind of reveals itself. Like you said, you get lost and then you find it, and that's what's so cool about it.
I had one of those moments last night. You know how it is. Like some days, all you have is time to do like an hour, and you just spend a time sketching, whatever. And then sometimes it's like, all right, this is my day to like lose myself in it. And I was doing a lot of line work here. Let me show a prop real quick.
Please do.
So this is a pen and ink drawing I'm working on now, but I personally really like the look of ink washes, but I'm trying to do it because I'm on Bristol with Copic markers instead of ink washes. But basically, I was like, all right, today I'm going to do only line work. I'm going to focus on line weights and like keep everything really tight. And then I was drawing, and I'm like, all right, this part is looking really flat to me. I need to render this pretty much fully. So then the rest of the thing, I'll, start rendering to that degree. It's almost like I want to have that like machine-like efficiency of like, all right, this is this stage. But I'm like, you know what? It's going to get a little blurry because I need to prove to myself that I can make this thing look three-dimensional. So this is the drawing took fucking forever. But you can see I'm doing like the line work here. But this part I wanted to render to make sure it looked three-dimensional. And this is like a little bit of Copic and
nice,
some marker and stuff. But yeah, I think it's going to be pretty cool. It's like a fucking weird alien knight fighting off a space dragon. It's kind of pulpy looking.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's cool. I feel like that often happens where you do have to fully render one part to just establish figure out how you're doing it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I do the same thing every time. It's like when I start drawing off after that mono print, I have to render like one area. I try to kind of do it all together so it feels cohesive, but like, I'm not kidding. It never happens that way.
Yeah.
You
introduce a little chaos and then it gets the hand of you and you got to be like, all right, I got to finish this thought.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to ground yourself. And I think like having a reference point, I was always kind of told by like mentors and stuff, like, no, build it up, like build everything together. And sorry, I don't do that. And I'm never going to do that. I do that. That's why I got the mono print. That does it. And then it's like everything's out the window. I feel like, and you could probably relate to this, but it's always a matter of literally just throwing everything out the window all the time. You know what I mean? You have your methods, but you don't know what's going to happen until you get there. You can say that you're, everything feels just as unpredictable as the first time, to me at least.
It does sometimes. It really does. And it's like you have all this, hours and hours of experience, yet there are times when I'm just like, I feel like a complete novice. Like, what am I even doing here? You know what I mean? But then you figure it out.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Absolutely. Cool. No, I love seeing it. And I always love seeing that mid-process stuff. I feel like so many times, I think it's changed recently because like to appeal to the Instagram algorithm, you have to post videos now. But like I feel like I get tired of just seeing finished products all the time. And I think again, that's something that led me to the process. So, and show the process is, you see all this finished work and then I don't know. I think it's easy to maybe like for me at least compare yourself to other people and you're like, God, how did they do that? But then it's like, you see the process and then it's like, yeah, well, you can relate to that part, which is really cool. So I love seeing stuff like that, where it's this half finished thing and you don't really know where it's going. I mean, you have kind of a vague idea, but
there's a lot of problems yet to solve. You don't even know yet, So.
Yeah.
Man, I love watching process videos, and this is just me just being petty. I hate doing it. And I can never get the angle right on the phone. And then the phone's also where I have background videos watching, so then I can't get in the zone. And I feel like I make my worst strokes when it's like watching me. So it's like
absolutely. And 100%. I gotta be honest with you, I'm kind of talking out of my ass here saying that like, oh man, I love doing the process. I like when the process is out there and I like when people
I like
are
watching
able to,
it. Yeah,
exactly. And I watch it back and I'm like, yeah, I think maybe to someone who wasn't there when it was happening, it looks cool. But like to me, I'm like, that's definitely, none of these are the highlights of when it actually went down or how it actually went down. Especially drawing. Like the monoprint part's not too bad because I just film every one and I just leave it up there. I have a little claw that I put my phone on.
I got one of those too.
Yeah, it's what I got my ring light on right now. I feel like a true zoomer with their ring light here. But it just came with the thing. So, but I look nice, so that's good.
You look great.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, no, that changed the game because initially I had it like sitting on top of my shelf and I like put a book on top of my phone to weigh it down and hang off the edge. I thank God I didn't have cats at that point because they would have pulled it off. But yeah, no, that making the videos kind of sucks. Now I've gotten into just the routine of it, so it doesn't bother me as much, but it takes longer. I mean, the monoprint process takes twice as long when you have to take a video of it. But hey, if someone can find me through it because they liked the process, I guess it's worth it. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You know, sometimes some place like Instagram just bury it for no reason, and you don't know why. And then they'll put the other one on explore pages, and people will find you. You don't know how that happens. It's a gamble. So sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's not. You know.
I don't know. For me, it's like, would I rather spend all the time doing the filming, or do I? And then I use a reel and I use music that isn't that has a copyright, so I can't promote it. I'd rather just do a finished piece and then just put some money behind it, which, you know, that's maybe what they want, but like, it's easier for me.
Yeah.
And I don't mind like investing back in, but I don't know. That's
sure.
the trade-off I have, because the reels, I do end up using music that I can't then promote. And I'm just trying to get people to see it, you know, at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's tough. You know, I mean, it's tough. I feel like the rules are changing every day too. So you never really, every time you think you got a method down, it the next week, it doesn't work. So, you know, but yeah, the drawing, I really get you on the drawing part, because if you look at my process videos, the drawing parts, I don't actually do very much in them. I mean, I'm coming clean here. I make a few strokes, and it's like half the time.
Dude, I do the same thing.
You're just going over something you already drew to make it look like you're doing it in real time. You know, like, all right, you got me. You know, it's kind of, it's not always as genuine as it looks.
Oh man, what do you want to watch me erase and erase again? You know, is that what you want to see? Instagram?
Yeah, 1,000 times. Especially if I'm filming it, I'm gonna erase 10 times. You know, so yeah, I get you on that. You're like, do I need to be doing this right now? I could be doing this twice as fast, and I don't think it's a matter of making it better, but you could be doing it a lot faster. You know, I started doing the process videos for just my own stuff. I don't remember what the first one I did was, but I filmed one for, the first one I actually filmed intentionally was for Mortalis, the thrash band in California, for their single cover for Iron Jungle, which is like this big, hourglass shooting through space, and there's skulls on it, and but I was like, I'm gonna try doing a process video for this, and then it's like that took a little while to come out, so I had been doing process videos in the meantime, and then I looked back at the process video for Iron Jungle, and I was like, oh no, it's really not up to snuff with the quality of these other videos I've been doing. So there's a kind of a weird jump where it's like they get better and better, and then there's this one, it's like, secret, that's the first one I did, so there's a reason.
You got it based off the band's release schedule, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, which is, you know, it's always crazy and completely unpredictable. So
it's like your best work is always what you're creating, but you can't show it for years, so you're always showing stuff that's almost like, you know, a year past, or that's what I imagine it feels like.
1,000 million %.
I guess, like, what is like an art skill or like foundation or something that you're like working on right now that you kind of like, because I could think of like 3 that like I always just need to keep improving at, but is there like a couple that come to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do a little back and forth. I'll talk about mine, you talk about yours. Like,
sure.
Yeah. So right now, you know, obviously I've kind of gotten really stuck in this mode of that process and that mixed media, print, drawing. Then, of course, I do some digital on top of it afterwards, because I think, why not make it the best image it can be?
Yeah.
But okay. We've got Walter here. He's getting in the way. Don't be drinking my coffee. Hi, Walter.
Oh yeah. He's a little under a year. Is that what you said?
Yeah, he was born. He's only a few months old. He was born in April. So yeah. Anyway, So I'm sure he'll come in and bug me. Go bug mom. So I think really there's a few things that I've kind of started doing differently recently. So you know how I was kind of talking about how there's a period of time where I did a lot of I focused mostly on digital. Mm-hmm. But then I really got kind of tired of that. So I moved away from it. And that's what really made me jump into experimenting with these techniques and how I landed on this particular process. And but of course, you know, you do over time, uh, especially with merch designs, you know, you got to be kind of careful about how your work looks and how it's going to reproduce. So over time, especially in just mostly this last year, I've been kind of pivoting to doing digital stuff again for merch stuff because this is a really cool look. But sometimes it doesn't reproduce the way you want it to, and maybe I'm the only one who notices that. But because it's, you know, your own stuff, and you're always your toughest critic,
right? You stared at it for like 50 hours at least.
Yeah, of course. And but recently, I think like style wise, or I guess technique wise, mostly, and it's been kind of a challenge because getting back into doing, you know, strictly digital stuff and making it be comparable to my other stuff, it was a bit of a challenge, but I think I'm kind of on the right road with it because I've learned to do it the same way. I'm actually doing one right now, and I should share a process of it, maybe just like images when it comes out. But it kind of started last year because when I started working with Ghost, the first few designs I did were all traditional. First couple that came out, and two more have come out since that are digital. And I ended up pivoting. Just kind of, it had to do more with their like approval process and just the way things worked, like internally with them. It just worked better, and it was better for my schedule. And I've asked other. I feel like a lot of artists who actually work with Ghosts, they kind of get to know each other and stuff, which is cool. And I've asked Johnny Bush, my buddy Johnny Bush, who does some other stuff for them. I was like, okay, what is the difference between these two images? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, good, then I'm on the right track, because one was digital, one was traditional.
Nice.
So that worked out nicely. But basically, I have a bunch of scanned in textures that I've made from monoprinting. I have my paper that I use, which is kind of this lined paper. And then I also have, I have like 8 or so just random monoprint textures that vary from not a lot of water to a lot of water. And so one's more fluid looking and one's more scratchy. And, you know, this is a bit of it's like a spectrum.
Yeah.
And so because I have all those scanned in, I was like, well, why don't I just pop these into channels in Photoshop, and I can kind of recreate the monoprint look with a transparent digital effect. So that's what I've been doing now with all my digital work, or at least most of it, where I want to capture that look. Is I wish I had an example. I don't have an example because they exist in the computer. Duh. I was like, I gotta go grab one, and it's like, well, okay, they're not physical, you know. So, and that's fine. But the cool thing is, I've kind of, so I just, instead of printing, I take them into channels in Photoshop, and I select them and just fill them with whatever color. Then you can do them in separate color layers. So that's what I've been doing lately. Is I'll go in and I'll get my drawing up, and then I'll go in and I'll just kind of, I don't want to say hastily, because you do have to be a little more precise when you do it digitally, but I'll go in and I'll just reveal the textures in those areas. I'll put a mask over it and just reveal the textures in the areas I want them. And then I'll have a texture layer of one color. Then I'll go in and I'll have I use like 2 different brushes in Photoshop. And I'll go in and I'll draw over it, clean up edges and stuff like that. But it keeps the texture, so it kind of basically looks the same as the traditional stuff. Obviously, the colors don't blend the same way, but it's going to be more honest to what it's going to look like when it gets screen printed. Because, of course, you know, screen printing is kind of a hurdle when it comes to really like stuff with lots of colors and detailed stuff. So that's something I've really been working towards and doing more lately. Not only does it take less time, but it's just more practical with that stuff. I did some of the Realms of Death stuff traditionally. I did the Spiritworld one traditionally because I really wanted to. That was a process I really wanted to show.
Right.
Which you can go in and extract the different colors and stuff, but you You have to be really specific about how you go into it. And I just don't want to be like stuck on that the entire time of like, oh, I got to keep these colors separate while I'm drawing it traditionally. It's like, just do it digitally. So that's been something that this year I've been having to do a lot more, especially like I said, when I do like the merch designs for Ghost, now I do those all digitally. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I think
fire away. I want to hear.
I mean, it's there's always something with like just the foundations of art that I'm working on, but I think always trying to get things like in perspective is always really important for me, especially trying to do a whole scene. You make one mistake and it could flatten it out. So it's not only perspective with doing it to horizon line and mapping out some of those lines to begin with, but it's also line weight as you go farther back. But then you got the challenge of, I'm thinking with the piece I'm working on, it's a spaceship sky, or it's an outer space, right? So it's like a giant window into outer space. So do I make that pure black, have some like white streaks, some stars and stuff to break it up, or do I do more of a gray crosshatch because it's a bit in the distance? That's the problem I got to figure out. So, and
yeah,
whenever you're working traditionally, especially with pen and ink, you can do like whiteout and stuff. I try to avoid as much as possible, but it's not very forgiving. So you have to, I do have a lot of like, I'm very calculated to begin with. Where's my sheet? But I take a picture of the line art and then I do value studies before I start. I do stuff like that just to be prepped. And I'm not like opposed to digital, but I don't really know much about it. Like I work with my wife for like these thumbnails and stuff because she helps me out a ton. But I have a day job where I work at a computer 40, 50 hours a week, so anytime I can just draw, it's always nice. And then drawing skills specifically, working on form, just everything existing in a 3-dimensional space,
Yeah.
So just obvious stuff that, you never really not work on, but
it persists.
They make the biggest difference,
Yeah. And I mean, you can master those as much as you think you can, but there's still going to be a challenge every time. You know what I mean? So like, I struggle with perspective all the time. Most of the time I just sort of do away with it nowadays. But
it's nice when you just make something floating, You don't have to worry about it.
It is. Yeah. But at the same time, I kind of did that with the Mortalis piece, which I hadn't sent you, but I was like, oh, it's going to be in space, so I don't really have to worry that much about it perspective. And it's like, oh yeah, but we need to put a city inside the hourglass and make sure the hourglass is in 3-point perspective. It's like,
3-point? No.
Yeah, I'm always like, I'm going to do 1 point. I'm only going to do 1 point. I'm going to make this simple. I like 1-point perspective the most because I just think it's like bold and, I love like just when you look at stuff straight on and there's that core just to the point, your eye goes right to it, and I think 1 point does that a lot. I love radial, just like the radial perspective of it too. That's what I like. But occasionally, you want to vary things up, and when you're done, you're usually happy, but while you're doing it, it can be quite miserable.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Man.
So I feel you on the perspective and value. I don't know if I'm ever truly going to master those. You know what I mean? I think even the masters would say the same thing.
Yeah. Those are the parts that aren't very fun, but they have the payoff at the end. That's the thing.
Yeah. And then you're halfway through something, especially if you're doing it for a job. It's like you're halfway through it and you're like, I'm not going to have to restart this, right? Like
I hope I can pull this off.
I told them I'd give this to them next week. I can't start over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What part of creating art is your favorite? Like it could be like a phase, like sketching, the actual process of the printing, rendering with the colored pencil. Like I bet that's probably pretty fun.
That's probably my favorite part. Yeah.
Yeah. When you already have the piece, kind of you see, it's like, all right, I can just not make that many mistakes. I'll pull it off.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because at that point you've already kind of drawn and painted it how many times, So
Yeah.
you're like, I'm finally getting the payoff here, because the sketching part can be fun. I sketch digitally, like I had mentioned a little earlier, but I sketch digitally so I can just rework stuff easily. Because I do thumbnailing, but I only do a few, and I land on a basic. It's more about composition with thumbnailing. It's not really
Totally.
So once I land on something, it's like, if I could take it into Photoshop and I just sketch it a bunch until I basically get something right and then take reference for it. Of course, most of my people look like me because I pose for all the reference, but that's okay. Call it a trademark. I don't know. Maybe it works better than a signature because I'm literally in there. But
hey, man, that happens to all of us.
Yeah, it does. But the sketching sometimes can get annoying because you're like, it's like originally I really wanted to go into like visual development, like concept art and stuff like that. But then I realized it's like all sketching, and I was like, I hate to say it, I want more payoff than that. And I get that the payoff is you get to see these things, come to life and get made, and I love that. But I don't know. I like seeing something through to the end myself. So I'd say that phase when you're doing the colored pencil over like the monoprint textures, because you're like, you really get to up close see those textures and see the cool stuff, and you get to interpret the textures in ways you didn't expect before. So that's my favorite part. And then of course I got to photograph it, and of course I used gold paint, and there's reflective stuff, and I have to fix things digitally, and I usually enhance a few things digitally too, but because it's all part of it. So, and I like working digitally. I just don't like working digitally a lot. So, because again, I mean, like you said, you're staring at a screen all the time. You don't want to stare at a screen anymore. Sometimes I don't even want to like play video games because I'm like, well, I was working on my computer all week, and I don't want to look at a screen. So
I feel you, man.
Yeah.
In terms of like video games, I don't play, so I don't know how much I can contribute to that. But I do recall you have a Resident Evil 4 tattoo. Is that part of your?
Certainly do.
Yeah.
My video game Bible, which is Resident Evil 4, which is like the most.
I remember playing that game, dude. I had it on this small little tiny tube TV. You know those little TVs that they were made in like the late 90s and 2000s, where it's supposed to be like in your kitchen while you're like making a meal, like one of those little tiny ones.
Yeah,
I played that game on that, like just in high school. It brings me back some good memories.
Yeah. No, they just remade it, and the remake is phenomenal. Because I saw one comparison saying, and this is a tangent I'll happily go on, because I'm not like the biggest gamer, but there are several series that are major influences on what I do, and Resident Evil is definitely one of those. I mean, I everything about that. I mean, maybe sans 5 and 6, but we had one of those too. It had a little VCR built in too.
Oh,
so it was
nice.
like a tiny TV, and you could put we would go on road trips, and you'd pop Bugs Life in, and we would stick it, but it would like jam between my parents' car seats, and my brother and I. You'd plug it into the cigarette lighter plug thing, and in this big converter that would get super hot, where you could plug it in your car. But oh god, yeah. So I mean Resident Evil 4 done by Hillary, my friend and tattoo artist, at Riverside Tattoo in Savannah.
I've heard of that.
No, they're wonderful, wonderful people. But she even I told her to like yassify it a little bit, so it's got like sparkles on it, because that game.
Nice.
Something I love about it is it's just like so painfully like it almost tries to be so stupidly masculine, but at the same time. It's like such high camp at the same time that it is just like it's this weird polarizing effect that makes this magical soup. And I love it. And they kept that in the remake, which is just great. I mean, yeah, Leon is a little bit less of a misogynist in the remake, which I appreciate. But yeah, no. Resident Evil, massive, massive influence. I paused my game to be here. Come on.
Oh.
No, I didn't. I wasn't playing anything this morning. I woke up, I made breakfast, I'm here. So
What other games?
Silent Hill, definitely.
Nice.
That was my big introduction to survival horror, and then I got into Resident Evil. So yeah, I started with 2, 3, 4. I love 4 is actually my favorite. A lot of people don't like 4, but I Silent Hill 4 is incredible. Walter Sullivan, who I named my cat after.
Nice.
Yeah, no. I think, geez, talking about remakes. That 2 is being remade, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, Silent Hill is a big deal. I just remember playing 2, and I'm like, you can make this kind of story with a video game. It's like, holy shit. It just scared the crap out of me. And then Masahiro Ito, who did all the monster design, is like, I mean, one of my biggest influences. I'm actually doing a merch design right now that's like specifically Silent Hill, like Masahiro Ito inspired, because that's what they wanted, which I was like,
perfect.
So yeah, I'm really stoked on it. It's gonna be a fun one. I'm gonna like, I really want to do it like in the Silent Hill 2 font, their names. We'll see if that flies, but it might not. Yeah. Silent Hill, Resident Evil. I've recently really gotten to like the Dark Souls stuff, which is really hard and takes up way too much of my time.
I've heard really cool concept art though.
Yeah, I mean Bloodborne's probably the coolest, just because it's so gothic and like just feels like Cradle of Filth, the video game,
Nice.
So like Cruelty and the Beast, but if you turned it into it's awesome. Yeah, and then I sunk way too much time into Elden Ring after clowning on it, thinking it looked stupid, and then I played it. And I was like, my brother sent me his old PS4. I hadn't played an updated system in like 10 years, and then he was like, I got a PS5 here, you can have my PS4 because I don't want it anymore. And then it's like, great, there goes all my time. But then again, I got back into all the Resident Evil games, and those are a big influence on me. So it's crazy. I forgot how much that was imbued in my like DNA of as an artist. Was like, I mean, Resident Evil 4 with, my God, Ramon Salazar is probably my favorite video game villain of all time. The like Napoleon like guy with the 2. He's the boss of the castle, in Resident Evil 4.
I think so. I never finished it. I got stuck on a boss.
It's long, so yeah. Of course, I've gotten it down to just under 4 hours on the remake, even though it's a 20-hour.
Oh, you're speed running, huh?
I am. I gotta get in the remake. You can. It's so stupid, but in the remake, you can, if you get it under a certain amount of time, you can get cat ears for Leon, and he has ultimate ammo. So at this point, I'm not even playing new stuff. I'm just replaying that. I think I'm on like my 9th play of it or something like that.
Damn.
Anyway. Yeah, but it's fun. I love it. I mean, it's on my neck, so
that's cool.
What I really want to get into, what I am into, but I don't have a PS5, so Blasphemous is it's basically like side-scrolling Dark Souls, but it's super like gothic, and I think country of origin, I think it's Spain, so it's got kind of that medieval Spanish influence, which is huge influence on me, just period. We have the Cloisters Apocalypse facsimile in the other room, so Blasphemous is cool. Blasphemous 2 is not out for PS4 yet, though, so it's like, I should probably be saving money. Yeah, I mean, just check out the art for it. It's just phenomenal. So
nice. I got a hopefully thought-provoking question. We'll see. What are some qualities art must possess to be good in your eyes? So, like, in other words, what separates good or great art from like mediocre? And there's like so many different ways you could answer this. And first of all, none of this is like either of us trying to be like hoity-toity, like this is our like opinion is fucking law. It's just a discussion. So, because I feel like I don't want this to come across as pretentious at all.
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is because, again, no matter what our answers are, they're going to be entirely subjective anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So Yeah, so it's just what we think. And Walter is trying to drink up my coffee, and that will kill me. So don't. Yeah, so I think when it comes to that sort of stuff, I think that when it like, how do I say this? And again, it's like you said, it's kind of a tough question. So, I would say that as long as, to me, it's the visual language. You know, I think no matter how detailed, how not detailed, it doesn't like matter. I don't really care about that. It's just, can I see this and can I distinguish you? You know what I mean? And there's a lot of artists that, they might have similar styles, and I don't want to say there's artists that I can't distinguish from other, because most of the time, if you look for it, you can.
Right.
But I'd say there's like something that I don't love that I see, and this isn't a shade to these artists. Walter, okay, I'm sorry. Walter, come on, buddy.
It's like a part-time job for you, man.
Yeah, if you couldn't tell there, I was having a bit of a hard time gathering my thoughts while my cat was climbing my curtain and bringing my shelf down.
You're an expert cat handler.
Hey, I do my best. I grew up with them, so
I feel you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think sometimes, we were talking a little bit earlier about Instagram process reels and stuff like that. I think a lot of the time you see a lot of people that, and again, these are extremely skilled artists, so this isn't me calling you out or nothing like that. And I have a lot of respect for what you do. So if you can tell, I'm treading lightly. Yeah. But you see a lot of people who they just do really realistic renderings of I don't know, either with graphite or stuff like that.
I know what you're talking about.
I think honestly, those they're just not for me. They just don't interest me. I don't care, because I see a gazillion of them, and they're all different artists, but they're all kind of just doing this one thing. And I have a lot of respect for them, but just the hyper realism's never really. It's just, I don't know. I don't get anything out of it. You know what I mean? I want to see visual language. It's like, you look at someone like Keith Haring, is a prime example, but you see Keith Haring, that's Keith Haring, because in his mind, he just started drawing, and that's what that's what he draws, and that's how he draws a human being. How he draws a dog, because he always uses dogs, they're my favorite thing, but how he's going to draw a dog ain't the way I'm going to draw a dog. I just drew 2 dogs on fire. Sorry, dogs, for another Sadist piece coming up. That's their fault though, because they wrote the lyrics. So, but no, it's that's sort of really and I think there's a lot of young artists who will see that and think they have to be like that. And right. I don't love that. Maybe that's a standard that people think they need to live up to. And it doesn't scratch an itch for me. And I just want to see I just want to see the you in stuff.
Right.
And I go, you could tell I'm totally stumbling over my words here.
But no, you're fine, man. I agree on pretty much all your fronts here.
It's a hard thing to talk about, because I have respect for anyone who wants to put time into their craft. So it's, I have a lot of technical respect for those sorts of works, but it's just, I don't know. I think you get a lot of duplicates of that where it's, I don't know, this is such a weird tangent I'm about to go off on here, but there's so in Savannah, there's a museum called the Graveface Museum run by Graveface Records.
Yep, I'm familiar.
Yeah, and they have a whole room of serial killer art. Yep. That's a phenomenal museum, by the way. If anybody's ever in Savannah, you have to go to the Graveface Museum. Support those amazing people.
Good record store, got the good VHS store right there. Yeah.
Yeah, TerrorVision too. I mean, they've been killing it with their releases, which was someone I desperately want to make stuff for if you're listening. But they have a whole room of serial killer art, and it's a lot of Gacy. I think it's the biggest Gacy collection in the country. It's a lot of him, but then there's also, it's so funny because there's also a lot of like, there's a bunch of ones that are like, there's one specific, I don't know who made it, and it might have been an unknown, because some of them are unknown, like criminals who just like one-off things, but they have their art. And there's like, it's like a drawing of Pinhead and Pennywise and like Freddy Krueger, and it's the like graphite style of like, it's really just trying to replicate the image. And every time I go in there and I see it, I'm like, oh, it's like those Instagram videos of people like trying to perfectly draw a bar of soap.
Get Vin Diesel's sweat on his forehead. It's
exactly like that. And whenever I see that, it just reminds me, I'm like, damn, But I think, to me, I think that, I don't want to call it mediocre, but like, I just don't see, it's going to sound cliche, I don't see the soul in it,
right?
The way that I see it in people who, I don't know, I think technically anybody can make art no matter what. It's just a matter of how you hone those skills and whether you want to hone those skills, because and unfortunately a lot of people do give up because they feel discouraged, and I don't blame them for doing that. But, no matter who, like every single different person is going to have a different look to it. It's just a fact of life. It's the way, it's just because your DNA sequence is different from everyone else's DNA sequence. And that's what I want to see, Yeah. And of course you'll see influences that come through, and that's cool because you also gel with those like say like, oh, this person's really influenced by Frazetta. And of course I like Frazetta because Frazetta's the GOAT.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But of course it's not Frazetta. It's this person. That's something that's cool. It's like, I don't know, one artist that comes to mind for me is Brad Moore, who's done like he's done the covers for like Worm and Spinebreaker this year, which is one of my favorite albums.
Love the art on that one.
Yeah,
he knocked that out of the park on that piece.
Oh my god! Well, it's like I've never seen another artist who looks like that. There's
Brad's one of a kind.
It's like that visual language is that's how you see the world. Is you get to kind of look through their eyes, which is to me that's the distinguishing factor. And I've probably said it. I say it over and over again. I have a big tendency to repeat myself, but
you're fine.
I just love that about I love that about any artist where it's like, oh my god, that's I like to think about how I don't know how they came up with this, how they saw this, and if you are just reproducing the sweat on Vin Diesel's head, it's like, I'm sorry, hey, maybe there's always a time and place for that. Don't get me wrong. It's just I don't really want to be at that time and place.
Yeah. No, dude, yeah. I'm 100% with you.
Yeah.
That's an answer I've heard a couple of times when I've had like this type of discussion, is people not really liking that stuff. And I get why, because where's the creativity? There's really not any. You're just pulling a still either from a promo pic and then you're replicating it. And it's like, where's your statement? So to me, I doubt any of those artists are even watching this. This isn't this type of channel. But like for those people, it's like, make something that has a little bit of something to say. Like it's either Lauren or Laura Lipton. I'm sorry. She takes very photorealistic stuff, works on a huge scale, but there's a story behind what she's creating. So it's not photorealism isn't the problem. I'm sure we agree. It's that you have nothing to say.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right. Well, and you look at artists like Chuck Close,
Yeah.
He started out and he did the photorealistic stuff. And then he eventually devolved into, no, I don't want to say devolved, evolved.
We had that accident or illness. I don't remember
exactly.
Which, but he got
but
paralyzed.
he still came through with that. And even so, before, I mean, but with his stuff before, it wasn't necessarily like just photorealism. It was these massive portraits, and he literally wanted to put kind of, I don't know whether it's like a commentary or something like that. I kind of studied him a long time ago, so if I'm misspeaking here, but it was almost like he was treating the process as if he was a printer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was making the dots on a printer to pull that off. So I think that is interesting. But again, I just want to see that and I think unfortunately with the AI stuff, that's unfortunately disappearing. And why we're doing stuff like this and why we have these conversations, why we talk about process and our influences, because, that's only as good. What you put out is only as good as the program, and it's not about being good. It's about being you. So, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Here's another. What about to say?
Oh, and I was just going to say, what I would hate to see is younger artists get discouraged because they think that it's all about the perfect thing you can put out rather than yourself. So they see things like that and then they never even pick up a pencil. You know what I mean? So
you got to just, at the end of the day, like you have to truly love the process. And if you do want to get good, or you want to be on that path, because that's the path I'm trying to be on, is trying to get good. I wouldn't even say I'm there yet, because both of us are still relatively young. We still got time to develop, but I think there's a lot of times our advice of like draw every day, but if you're drawing the same thing every day and you're not being intentional, like you're because I feel like being intentional with what you're trying to practice is so important. That's one reason why, like, I asked the question of like, what's one particular piece of or aspect of art that you want to improve on? Because if anyone's watching, like, you kind of have to think like that. You can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to draw today. And yes, you will get a little bit better every year. But if you try to learn, even if you're self-taught, if you try to learn and you try to be very critical about your stuff, yet enjoy the process, because there's always that give and take of like, to me, to create good art over time, there has to be sacrifice. And there has to be a little bit of punishing yourself. Otherwise, you're not pushing yourself enough. If it ever feels easy, you're not doing it right, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And every time you get mad, you just got to remind yourself, like, of course I'm pissed, because it's not the way, it might not be turning out the way you want it to, but it's the way it's supposed to turn out. You're exactly, even if we're going to get spiritual here, I truly think you're exactly where you should be at every time in the process. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you need to focus on what is and not what is, because right now, if you're trying to improve a skill, that's what you're doing, and that's okay. Like, you're not always going to be creating your masterpiece. You know what I mean? And there's no such thing as a masterpiece, because don't you want to try and make a masterpiece every time? You can try. It's not going to happen. But I don't know. You're going to make what you're supposed to make. And I think that's okay.
Yeah. So much of it is just humility. I feel like the better an artist gets, sometimes like the less confident they are, which is very interesting. Or they know what they don't know, like, because I had a lot of conversations with artists that I know technically can do a lot of shit that I can't yet. And then they're like so in their head. And I'm like, if there's anything I can leave you with is like, yes, I don't want you to get cocky, but like, if I can give you genuine, not internet comment praise, please take it. And if it carries you into the next week, I feel like I'm doing something good, because it's coming from a genuine place of, admiration.
Yes, absolutely. They're always saying that. I'm a huge drag fan. It's one of my biggest influences, drag. And they're always saying that every time on Drag Race, because of course, where do I go to see drag shows in Sylvania? I go to Savannah when I can, and I see phenomenal ones there. But
nice.
Yeah, but they're always saying, it's always that matter of getting in your head. I've just noticed, always on Drag Race, on every episode, someone's like, she's just getting in her head. It's like, that's why it didn't happen this week. It's like, you're just in your head. And one of my biggest all-time influences, just as this is again sidetracking, but it has a lot to do with what we're talking about.
That's fine.
One of my biggest influences of all time, I guess just as a person, as an entity, is Andrew WK.
cool.
I love he's been one of my favorite artists since I was in high school when I first discovered him. I mean, I Get Wet is a perfect album, but other than that, I mean, it's his philosophy. It's the of course there's the whole thing of do we know if he's real or not, which is but I think that's what he wants you to think, because he's always talked about his whole philosophy is he's never truly comfortable with where he is at any given time, and that's okay. I love that about him. His last album, God Is Partying, is
that the one that has the Boris Vallejo cover, dude?
No, that's the one before it, which is also phenomenal. He actually has a song that's from You're Not Alone, which is, again, having a Boris Vallejo, Andrew WK is just...
Dude, I watched there was like a little mini doc. It was really entertaining, man. Like, that was so cool. He seems like such a nice guy. He's
such a cool guy. And, he even has a song. He has a song on You're Not Alone called I think it's I Don't Know Anything. And it's like, that's been his whole philosophy all these years. He's just like, I don't know anything. I don't claim to. I'm just going to exist and be happy with that. And everything is up from there, So, which of course you can go down from there as well. But as we've all experienced tough stuff in our lives and there's horrible things that happen in the world, but like, I really try to stick to that. And that's really spiritual consciousness at its core, if we're going to get into it. But it's just to exist. And that's all there is to it, which is awesome. And I've always liked that about him. God Is Partying, though, his last album was phenomenal. It was very divided with people, but it was kind of his first like metal album, like capital M metal album, and it was awesome. Not all of it's metal; it's like half of it's kind of a metal album, but it's a banger for sure. He's pretty awesome, huge influence. But I think it all ties back into that of just like the humility and being okay with not being okay, and that's if that's where you are at the time, of course it's uncomfortable. But
totally. I completely agree. Well, you talking a little bit about inspiration and kind of coming from places that aren't visual art, but like I look at your work and I'm not like, oh, I can tell this person's inspired by this. Like I really don't know where you kind of draw some of your biggest visual.
That's good, I guess.
No, it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But like, who are a couple that stick out to you?
Of like specifically visual artists?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or people what have other people compared you to? Because I can't place it, You ever had that?
I don't know. I guess you're right. I guess it's not like I've had people be like, oh, this is very Giger, this is very Frazetta, but I also think those are just buzz names.
Yeah.
Anytime
people know the name,
yeah. Every time you have a squiggly creature on something, it's Giger, and every time you have a buff guy, it's Frazetta. Which is like the Realms of Death cover that I just did was actually the Ruin, this big red one that I just put out. Extremely Frazetta inspired, So we got that there.
I could see it somewhat, but even then, still very
there's the big giant woman in the background was like that was a direct like swamp. What is it?
A sense of flow, Frazetta always has that good compositional flow. I feel like that's where I would see the tie-in personally.
Yeah, but I mean, again, like what I try, I don't want this to sound like, because I take inspiration from like pretty much all the art I see. It's like I try to just turn it into this big soup, and what comes out comes out. Again,
maybe that's just how you are, Like you're not like you don't have your 4 favorite people that you mix in a blender. You have like 50, 60, 80.
I don't. That's why people say like, "What are your top 5 death metal bands?" It's like I can't name that off the top of my head. It's a soup. I love so many of them. It's like, what am I supposed to say? It's like I guess maybe Carcass is my favorite. I don't know. Maybe Dismember. It's like I don't know. It's the same thing with artists. It's hard. It's hard to make lists. I mentioned like Brad Moore, big influence. There's how do I say?
You gotta watch. Have you seen the interview I had with him?
No, I haven't yet.
Dude, you gotta watch that one. And he's probably by the time this comes out, he's gonna be back on the show. I just filmed it last week.
Yeah. No, he's just
He's
phenomenal.
a really insightful person.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I just like, I don't know, with that visual language is just incredible. Like I love when I don't know what I'm looking at, but there is something there. And I think he's really, I don't know. I mean that in a good way. I really, but I also, I mean, there's a lot of big ones that I really look up to, like, if I'm saying it right, Zabinyu and Bielak, who's, I feel like every time he does a cover, I'm like, I have to know what that album is. You know what I mean?
Is that the guy who also did Ghost, and he
does every Ghost,
Aggression and the Carcass. He did the
Torn Arteries.
Peppers. Yeah.
Which is crazy
because
he's amazing. Like, that's not what he does, but he did that. He chose to do that as the cover, which I think is incredible. That he's so because I know I think his back. I don't want to speak out of term here, because I know Imperial Triumphant, who I also work with, did Alphaville with him.
Which is mind-blowingly... I saw the in process for that. I was like, oh, God.
And again, I am not that calculated. I got to hand it to him to be that patient and that, like, how he does... like, because I believe his back... I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I believe his background is in architecture, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure looks like it.
And, oh my God. I mean, that was one moment where I was like... I think it was kind of affirming because... when I started working with artists who had worked with him, I was like, okay, maybe there is validity to what you're making because the same people who are choosing to work with that are choosing to work with you. So, I mean, that's not at all me trying to sound cocky. It's just being like, oh my God, like someone I look up to, I've tangentially worked with.
Yeah, it's good for the clients.
No, totally. It really is. And it's like, I mean, in Imperial Tramp, they're just like, I mean, they're just the coolest guys, you know? And they have such a vision of what they do.
Yeah.
And what's cool about them is they're very deliberate about their artists and they're very open to the process. You know, they're very like, they have their core imagery, but it's like, we want you to do something with this. We trust you. They put a lot of trust in their artists. And that's, I think, really admirable because some people, you know, they want to be that like Stanley Kubrick, like, grip on everything you're doing, which I understand because that's your brand, that's your vision. You want to protect that, but I think you're going to get way more interesting effects when you just trust that process and trust who you're working with, and that's really cool. But yeah, he's a big one, kind of just in a I'm in awe of him way. As opposed to style, because I don't really take a lot of like style influence from him, but it's and then I might be saying his name, but Merald Van H, last name. I feel like a fake fan here, but he did he does the Necrot covers.
Oh yeah.
Jesus Christ. I mean that
Those
Mortal
are so
cover.
Cool.
Mortal is like, that's one of the coolest covers of all time. I never bought an album and a long sleeve and everything I could buy of that image so fast. I got
that shirt right over there.
I do. I was wearing my Necrot Mortal long sleeve yesterday. I was like, my God, it's just so iconic. You know, I feel like you could put that cover up there with like, you know, I don't know, any old cover. You could put that up.
That is such a good cover, man. You're right.
It's just, and I know he uses a lot of colored. He inspired me to kind of pivot to colored pencil too. So
he uses colored pencil, huh?
Yeah, he uses a lot of colored pencil, which is awesome. Which I was like, I don't know, I'm not really confident with this. But then I started trying it out because I was like, it really helps hone the monoprints and hone the details and stuff. And the way he does it is, it's really
colored
cool.
pencil is one of the most underrated mediums, in my opinion. I got a whole. That's what this is, right? These are I can never freaking pronounce it. The Karen Ashe or whatever. These are pretty nice pencils, man. But I think Copic markers and the colored pencils that they can produce nowadays are some of the most underrated mediums.
It is. It's funny. It's like, I want to say like a couple years ago, I was talking with my dad when I was visiting, and he was just like, does anybody actually like use colored pencils? I thought that's just kind of like a thing you use in grade school, and then like nobody actually uses that. And I was like, Dad, like, have you seen everything I've put out in the last like 2 years? It's like, okay, man, like, sure, whatever. But no, because I don't know. I used to use pastel, but honestly, it just became I couldn't quite get the sharp detail with it. Yeah, colored pencil. And because I've seen, like, I know Like if you've seen the inner artwork, I remember seeing the piece of the inner artwork of Mortal, and it has the half skull, half like musculature face, and he had shared the drawing of that, and it was like on gray paper, and it was just like I think he did the color digitally, and it was just like a black and white value of color pencil on tone paper, which is just really sweet. So,
what are you working on black tone paper as well? It looked kind of thin when you showed it up earlier. One of your pieces.
Yeah, I use I use one of two papers. Oftentimes with colored papers, I'll use Canson. Is it Meihoff? Meihoff? I don't know how to say it, but that's this stuff. And if you could see the gray, you could probably you can't really see the gray, but it's got a little bit.
Yeah,
it's got a little bit of a grain texture to it. Which of course I always draw on the textured side because texture, you know.
I avoid that shit like the plague.
Oh, really?
I like Bristol board. I like it being flat and just like super smooth and buttery, man.
Yeah, but again, that's what's cool is because of course in my mind I'm like, why would I ever use the flat side? And then in your mind you're just like, why would I ever use the textured side? So again, that's what makes this cool. You know, it's
totally.
It's those perspectives, you know. So, but of course I use this is Canson.
Oh, that looks sick.
Yeah, so this is the Slaughter cover for Realms of Death. This was the first single they put out.
I love those white highlights in that blood, dude.
Yeah, it's
really killed it.
Something I've kind of something I've kind of caught on to. I've noticed with my style is like everything is kind of metallic and shimmery.
Yeah,
and I think it's because I just love glamour and I love glitz and just again, drag, huge influence, and everything is just. I love the beauty element of stuff. I like kind of the grotesque nature, but I also like the beauty of it too, which is why everything shines. Everything has a gazillion like sparkling things on it, and I always got to add little like shimmer spots like this.
Oh yeah.
You know, but yeah, this is on Canson. I don't know. He's a classical artist. Ingres. Angers. I don't know how to say his name. Ingres. I was told the pronunciation of it years ago, but I don't remember. But it has this line quality, so it kind of looks like I drew lines, but I didn't.
God, I think that looks so cool.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You're familiar with Jerry Wormwalk? Do you know him?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I listened to a bit of his interview actually.
Yeah, he's become a friend, and I feel like if there's anybody I see some similarities, it's because you guys often work on like kind of a black or a dark. That's the part that I kind of sometimes see. That is some similarity, very far different, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I get you. I mean, I love working on black because I have a lot of examples that like. I guess it just depends on the job, because like oftentimes like if I've done shirt designs and they're printed on black, I'm gonna do it on black, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I got some. It just depends on the job, you know. It's like if some instances call for colored backgrounds, like this is for Magdalene, the Dying Process. They have this EP it's a full length, I believe. It's coming out on Halloween. This is actually awesome. They bought this off of me. I didn't commission this for them. I put it up as a licensable design, but they bought it from me, and they put out a single a while ago of the Dying Process, and then they're putting out a full album of it this year. And they just wanted to use the same artwork, you know, which is cool because I guess if they liked the art that much, then sweet.
Yeah, perfect.
You know? Yeah. That's cool, though. I appreciate that because I'm a big fan of Jerry's, and him and I have talked only very briefly over Instagram, but he's a real nice guy. So.
Oh, totally. He's hilarious too.
He's so fucking funny.
He cracks me up, man.
I look. I don't always agree with his opinions, but like I fucking love his. He's always going on Instagram.
His Jerry takes.
I needed to give you a Jerry take, which is hilarious. But I don't even get like. It doesn't matter what he's talking about. I just find it entertaining. So, Jerry, if you're listening, shouts out to you.
Oh yeah, dude. No, he makes me laugh so much, and then like, I mean this from a place of respect. It's like, I I just don't have many opinions on things, and then he has like an opinion on everything, and it's like so like it's like he's doing a dissertation. I'm like, dude, I can't even like.
Yep.
I'm like kind of I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
I'm passionate about things, but like,
Yeah.
damn.
Well, I personally, it's funny because I'm just so fluid about the things I enjoy. It's just like, yeah, I like that. If I don't like something, okay, I'm not going to worry about it. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, but it is funny seeing him just rag on stuff on Instagram. It's so fucking funny. And I appreciate, but it's like, I don't get off on being a hater personally, but it is funny to watch people, and he's so articulate too, which is what I really appreciate about him. Because I am not. I do my best to be articulate.
You're articulate. What are you talking about?
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's something I don't have a lot of confidence about, which is why I'm a visual artist, is because I never had confidence in anything I wrote or really what I said. So it was always, I would go to drawing it. And even then, some people will look at my stuff and have no fucking clue what they're looking at. So I don't know if I've achieved it or not. But yeah, but yeah, I appreciate that because Jerry is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, totally, man. Let's see. You want to pull up some art, talk through it a little bit, maybe like the story? Like, obviously, the first thing beyond the process I had was, hold on a second.
Can I refill my water real fast?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we're back.
Yes, sir. All right, so I pulled up some of your ghost designs, and just like, how did this all kind of happen, man?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, like, this is such a... I mean, to me, this is one of my biggest like accomplishments personally.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've followed Ghost from mostly the beginning. Around 2010, 2011 is when I first heard about
Opus Eponymous came out right around then.
Yeah, no, and I was because I love pageantry. I love like especially like because I have a big drag influence, but like I love a show, and I love bringing the visual side into stuff. So they first struck me with, it's like, well, it's what if the Pope is a rock star? And I think that's fucking brilliant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I go back, I saw them in high school first. I saw Papa Emeritus 2. Yeah, it was 2. And it was like the day Infestissimum came out is when I first saw them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 10 years ago because they just re-released the dildo set. Which
due to popular demand.
Yeah, which is hilarious. So but again, I've been a fan of them for a long time because some people, they think, well, they look cool, but I don't like the music. I love the music. I think it's cool. It's just stupidly enjoyable. And I like anything that's like that. And it's indulgent. And I've just been into it I get a lot of flack from other metal fans for liking them, which I think is bullshit. Like, who cares?
Oh, dude, I like Ghost.
Yeah, no, it's sweet. So
that was what my first dance with my wife was to a Ghost song. So if
what
that's
song?
telling you anything. So it's Dance Macabre, and then
Nice.
I already forget the name of it. It's on Prequel as well. It's one of the later tracks.
Dude, I love Prequel.
Just blanking on the name. Yeah, I think that album's great. But yeah, it was a mashup of the songs and we took dance classes, a whole choreograph thing.
Awesome. Oh my God, I love that.
I'll have to show you sometime. But this isn't about me. This is about your Ghost story. But
I know, but
you're talking to a fellow fan, so no judgment.
Sweet. No, it's funny because I'll get people in my DMs whenever I release a Ghost design, and they're like, well, I fucking hate that band, but your design's cool. It's like, but I don't make it sure it's on the record that I don't like that band. It's like, okay, I'm not going to tell anyone. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I made it. I got paid. Like, I'm proud of it. I don't care what your thoughts are. But no, that is really fucking cool. Jesus, I think Prequel might be my favorite album just because it's so decadent. And I just love that. It's so
grew on me for sure.
Well, a lot of people, that's kind of where they started turning away from them. But for me, I was just like, up the camp, and I know I'm just going on a Ghost tangent here, but like the fact that like Faith might be my favorite Ghost song because the fact that they get another Pope to come in and he growls a chorus and then does an evil laugh, like that's camp, baby. That's what I want. Like that's what I want to. That's what I want out of any experience is just that pure indulgence,
Yeah.
And yeah, so again, anyway, enough about me fangirling over Ghosts, which I will gladly do any day. They so yeah, I had been a fan of them for a long time, and they were obviously someone I thought that I really wanted to. I had seen their merch designs. I'm like, I think I'm at a level where I can do this because they have a lot of varied merch design. They've worked with great artists like David Brimley early on when they did a lot of stuff with him, and they still do some stuff with him. But like, I always remember seeing like the cross, like they did I have the Shining design where he's like popping through the doors like here's
Oh
Papa,
yes.
and he did the Jaws one. I in high school
There's like
I
a
had
Clockwork Orange one too.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And I love that because it's like you're blatantly putting on display like what your influences are, and I don't know, you never know. What if a fan doesn't know about something, and all of a sudden now they love that movie because they love this band who I don't know. I think that's cool. Now, what maybe the younger audience should not be watching is Caligula, which is the influence on this the forgive me, whatever it is, it's Mariana Cross re-release single
It's also
cover?
message from the clergy. It's like almost like a comp of like their big hit singles.
Yeah. I mean, and they kind of put it out and didn't like say anything. They just like put it out, and but I mean that's okay. I don't really care. It's out there. That's all that matters to me. It's heartwarming when I go on like Spotify and this is number one. It's like I have to do that every once in a while when I feel a little discouraged because I'm like, okay, man, you can get through this. You did that. What else? But it started so last year. It's kind of how this all went down. Is obviously I've been a fan for them for a while, but last year I had just finished up the first collection of work for Acetus, which we'll get to the false peace cover in a little bit probably, but I had just finished up work for Acetus for their next album, and I was like, I had no work. It'd been a while when I just had it. Again, we kind of talked about this, but it's hard to convince the public that you actually are busy when release schedules are so crazy. Because I've been continually busy a lot for the last couple years, but it's like I only have so many things to show for it because release schedules.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the case with that album, but that's okay because they're working on it. I just finished up that collection for Acetus, and I was just dry. I had no work, and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna try and get Ghosts. And I had made a few designs, and I made a couple designs, and so their merch company, Global Merchandising Services, that they work with, who also does stuff with like Twin Temple and Ozzy and Rob Zombie. So here's hoping. Oh god. So I got to go back even further now. When I first kind of wanted to start getting like freelance work, I would just like blast emails and postcards out to various people with like art and stuff. And I had found the contact, like Global Merchandising Services. I had managed to get the just general contact info for them, and then I still had it a few years later. And I was like, well, screw it. I'm going to reach out to them again because I had sent them something way back when my art was nowhere near ready.
Yeah.
But it was kind of cool to be like, okay, I'm going to try this again, and let's see if it works. And it worked, and you play that patient game, and they were like, yeah, let's get you in touch with creative. And so I got in touch with their creative team, and they basically, we had tweaked a couple designs, but I had approached them with some designs. And the top two there, the Spittlefield's Nemesis, which is a play on one of the old Jack the Ripper cartoons, or not cartoons, but newspaper etchings. Mm-hmm. And so I had reached out to them with a couple designs that were ready, and we didn't change the Jack the Ripper the one at all. But we did add like this. This originally was just the coin, and they were like, well, maybe let's put a bit of a background behind it. So we added the satin around it because I was like, that'd be cool. It's influenced by Caligula, which is one of my favorite movies. And of course, I was like, all right, it's Caligula. Caligula is technically a porno. So, like, how are we? I don't know if they're going to get into this or not, but they did, and they were crazy about the idea, and they were basically like, yeah, okay, we're also going to use it as a single cover. And I was like, what? I thought you were just going to use it. Like, we had just talked about. Well, we guess we didn't really talk about. We were just general merch purposes, but like, they were like, yeah, they also want to use this as a single artwork. So I'm like, oh my god, I don't work directly with Tobias. I work with the merch team, and
Right.
the band approves things. So I had done that, and I had sent this off, and it was like kind of quickly it all came together, which isn't always the case because there's touring, there's this and that, and sometimes approval times take a while. So it was kind of amazing that I basically just approached them with this design, and they were like, oh my god, like, it's like, sure, let's use it for a single. Because I had always assumed, well, I'm not going to do a cover, I'm going to do merch designs if I'm going to work for Ghost, because they have their people,
Right.
They got the one guy who did the original 7 Inches of Satanic Panic cover, and also did like the Dance Macabre single cover, and he does a bunch of their merch. Is it Costin? Costin, is that how I say your name? Sorry, I didn't do my research, buddy. But he's really cool, and he's done a lot of good stuff for them. And I just assumed that him and like Zbigniew Bielak and David Brimley, they have their set of artists they're using for covers. I'm never going to do a cover for them. Like,
Right.
I was at peace with that. And then so the fact that they had their merch team had come back to me, and they were basically like, oh yeah, they want to use this as a single cover as well. I was like, excuse me? Like, are we really? And I had known almost nothing about the whole phenomenon of Mary on a Cross happening.
Yeah.
Because I was like, yeah, that song's like 3 years old. It's a good song. I love 7 Inches of Satanic Panic. Both. I mean, I like Kiss the Go-Go more, but it was cool to see that, like,
Song had a second life,
Yeah, and I felt kind of grateful that I got to be a part of that song living a second life. I mean, full credit to the original artist who did 7 Inches of Satanic Panic, who really put the original artwork to Mary on a Cross. But it felt cool to be like, well, they kind of want to re-put out the Mary on a Cross song and kind of give it its own visual identity, which I guess is this. And it all came out so quickly, and I was told, it's going to be a single cover, and then the next day it had the version where it had the slow, whatever, the reverb, the TikTok version,
Yeah.
had dropped, and I was like, that's my stuff, like, officially on a Ghost cover. Like, what is happening? So that was a crazy 24 hours, and I'm extremely grateful for the people who I work with at Global Merch Services, and their creative team is really cool. And they, I don't know if they want to be named or not, because I don't know if they want people blowing them up.
Right.
You know who you are if you're watching this, and I really, appreciate you too. So, yeah, big deal. And it kind of blew the things open, because I'd been making a lot of stuff, but like the amount of people who had found my work had like doubled once this came out.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's cool that, some people maybe will clown on the fact that, TikTok song, whatever. And to that I say, hey, look, I mean, there were radio hits. Today there's TikTok hits. It's like, people discuss. All I care about is that people are discovering a cool band. And the fact that I get to visually represent that is not only important to me, but I don't know, it almost feels beyond that. Like, I'm just happy that I get to be associated with something that's made an impact on a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool, but yeah, no, that was kind of a freak thing that happened. But I'm really grateful for, of course, the team, and of course Tobias, who let this fly, which is now all of a sudden people are discovering Caligula, because obviously it's iconic and it's notorious, but it's one of my all-time favorite movies. I have a crop top of Caligula, the original cover.
I've never seen it, actually.
Yeah, if they took the porn out, that'd be okay. But yeah,
Maybe I'll watch it, maybe I won't, frankly. I don't know.
I don't know. There might be a cut that doesn't have that. Even so, I don't know. It's just I think it would have Oscars if it didn't have that in it. Personally, Malcolm McDowell, it's one of his best performances ever. and Helen Mirren, and it's just the decadence, the indulgence, and the like.
Just, when did that come out? Like 40s, 50s?
No, it's 1980.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought it was like a really old movie.
It's the most expensive adult film ever made.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so because they had Gore Vidal, who was writing it, who's a historian, and then they had Tinto Brass directed it, and but Bob Guccione from Penthouse basically was like, no. Yeah, cool movie you got there, but we got to fix it up a little bit. And then they added all this extra stuff in, which I don't know. I mean, regardless, I think it's a fascinating movie, and it's funny. I went on to like Reddit and stuff, the Ghost Reddit, which I don't like to do that, but I went on r/Ghost, and a lot of people were like, "Don't watch Caligula just because they're using Caligula. Like, don't watch." And I'm like, "No, it's again, if you're a younger audience, yeah, don't watch Caligula, but all adults out there watch Caligula. It's a great movie, and it's fascinating that like it's this historical epic that also somehow managed to be an adult film at the same time. Like that's fascinating to me, and I think culturally the impact of that is bizarre, but I don't know. It's interesting, and what I like about Ghost and how they do kind of these like parody designs is that I like the idea of that Ghost is cementing themselves, like the clergy and all that. They're cementing themselves in the existence of like culture and pop culture and history, and that they've been there all along, and that they have this influence on everything.
Yeah.
Like this grand master plan. So I do think it's an interesting commentary on pop culture, and that's why I made this and made the tribute, as well as the Jack the Ripper one, which is a John Tenniel illustration that it's based on for Punch magazine
nice.
in 1888 when the murders were happening. So it's and the cool thing about that song that's based on, one of their best songs in my opinion, Respite on the Spitalfields from Imperial, is it's really about the idea of that, like, just because Jack the Ripper left, he wasn't really gone, because the impact and I've seen like Tobias talk about this in interviews and stuff, but it's like he had this impact on so many people's lives, whether directly or tangentially or people they knew, that the fear was still there for so long after he was not killing anymore.
Yeah.
I know I liked that concept of that, and that's what drew me to that design. So, full credit obviously to the Caligula and the original Caligula poster, which is iconic, and the John Tenniel illustration, which is, the parody thing. I like doing it. I don't do it as much anymore, hence the two other designs down there. But I like doing it, but I only ever want to do it with things that are like known and huge. You know what I mean? Because It's like there's no mistake of like that is a nod to that other thing.
Yeah, it's not plagiarism.
Right, yeah. Right. And I do think there's a commentary element with how Ghost presents themselves here. So, yeah.
I particularly really like that roller coaster composition.
Hell yeah.
That one that one just personally really resonates. I love things that have like, kind of flowy kind of stuff. Like that's, I don't know. I'm always drawn to things that kind of do that. And then you have the tracks in the distance there. Really cool. I like that composition a lot.
Yeah, I live in my Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 fantasy.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love it.
Kind of looks like the Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 cover where the guy's like, ah! But,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, so that's my favorite design I've done for them, is the roller coaster design.
Yeah.
I love theme parks. We go to Orlando with our, we have a bunch of friends, and we all live in different parts of the country, and we meet at Horror Nights every year.
Okay, cool.
Universal Studios. So,
have you done it this year yet? Or
yeah, we just did it. Yeah, it's phenomenal. Been using that word a lot today, phenomenal. But I like what I like. I love what I love. So, I mean it. And but they just do an incredible job with that. And last year, I made this design because I was going to go to Horror Nights, and then I was like so inspired by all the crazy theme park merch with like the super exaggerated rides that are like exploding off the tracks and stuff like that. So I was like, What if has there been a Ghost theme park theme design? I don't know if there was or not. They've been so many merch designs that I don't know, but I hadn't thought one had not occurred to me at the time. So I was like, that would be sick if we have like a giant. I call it the Impera coaster. I literally based it on the Spillways line. It's such a ride because I was like, sure,
love that song.
It's a great, it's an ABBA song basically, but that's what I love about it.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
Absolutely not. Danced with my mom to ABBA at my wedding. So yeah, no, I love it. That's my favorite design I've done. The coaster. I had gone to Horror Nights and I was like so inspired by all the artists they had used on the merch and just the promotions and stuff. That's someone I really want to do stuff for is Horror Nights. I also know that the head of Horror Nights is a big Ghost fan, so hey.
Yeah, you might know my work.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but I had like a Blumhouse producer reach out to me being like, I love this design. Where can I get it? So I had to give him one of the links because it was on Amazon, which yeah. So he it's like weird stuff. Something cool happens every time I get to put out a Ghost design. So I'm not only grateful for Ghost and the people I work with their merch company, but I'm super grateful for like their giant fan base that comes out and brings the love. And it's cool because like there's other artists who have worked with Ghost who I've kind of gotten to. I don't want to say I've like gotten to know them because I don't know them super well personally, but we talk on Instagram and stuff, and it's neat. Like I've mentioned Johnny Bush, and he's in the UK, and he's one of the other artists who does a lot of like 3D stuff.
Yeah, I remember you tagged him on a post, and I started digging through his stuff too. Really, really nice professional.
Yeah, he's
work.
awesome. He does a lot of stuff for Wednesday 13, and cool. And he just did some Rob Zombie designs as well because Rob Zombie's also with Global Merch. So yeah, cool. The castle, obviously, it's a castle. It's cool. I want to show all the ghouls because I've been a fan of Ghosts since the beginning of the ghouls and seeing their evolution. So it's like, what if we put every ghoul on a castle? So I don't know. Cool.
Is it like is it the different ghouls of the different eras? Is that what it is? Okay,
yeah,
I see.
And there's
now.
Each pope is in each window. So like if you were to zoom way in, which you probably couldn't because that's not the highest res image, like Papa 1's up in the just hooded ghoul, and then Papa 2 is in the one with the Balta mask, and then there's the Prequel ones. There's Cardinal Copia on the tricycle, and then Papa Nile Zero. I don't know. I like saying Zero because it's cooler. But yeah, and then 3. But yeah, no, I love doing stuff for them. It's really fun, and I'm really glad that they've gravitated towards my style. So I really shouts out to Ghost, I guess. Not that everyone's not shouting you out all the time, guys. But
yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all that insight, man. That's awesome. So we're talking a little bit about this one, Ruin Realms of Dead.
Yeah.
Of Death, sorry.
Death, yeah.
And I on the left there, that's process, not the final. The final is on the right there for the viewers.
Yeah, man. These are, talk about sweet guys. These are Sam Vaughn, who I work with in their group. I've talked to all their members, and they're just great guys. But Sam first reached out to me, and he was like, all right, so, hey, we like your stuff. Like, we're putting out an EP. We would go through quotes and whatnot and stuff like that. But the first design we did for this, actually, let me grab it, is actually the one you showed before, but it's this one right here.
Mm-hmm.
Based on their awesome track, The Slaughter, which was their first single off the EP.
It's like a recurring character, this headless guy with is it a hammer?
You're catching on. The Babylon Butcher, as I like to call him. He's really cool. So basically Sam and I were talking. We're talking about like our influences and stuff like that. And I know he's also a big survival horror fan. So, he's a big Resident Evil, Silent Hill fan. And they had this line in Ruin where it's like, welcome to Spiral Down to Babylon or something like that. I don't know. That EP is just raw and sick and awesome. I recommend everyone to check out Ruin. But yeah, so I was kind of like, I drew him on this design, and it was just kind of a start. So this is it's mostly just a merch. It was started as a merch design, and but it's also on. Let me grab the CD or the tape. Yeah, but it's also on we used it as a back cover design as well.
Oh,
so,
cool.
You know, there's the front, and then there's the back, and we used it in the tape as well because it's vertical. I had to bust that out, but I'm not. But yeah, no. So it ended up looking really nice on there, and we started with this. I kind of had this idea of like this big, I don't know. So Sam's a bodybuilder, and yeah. So and I had realized like, okay, this guy's like really into this stuff. So I don't know if I've discussed this with Sam or not, but obviously, I am built like a twig, so I don't usually draw a lot of like large muscles or anything like that. But I was like, this guy's a bodybuilder. I feel like he's gonna want to see like, we want muscles. Like we got to have muscles on here. So I was like, let's make this butcher character that I don't know. There's not a lot of like lore behind him necessarily, but it's the concept that you know, his head was decapitated, or maybe he decapitated himself. I don't know. And he built his hammer and his knife out of pieces of his skull. So he's got like, you know, his hammer is the top and bottom of his skull right there.
Oh, okay.
And then the front where his eyes are is the knife with his teeth. So it's like a giant that is kind of through death been resurrected as this like kind of harbinger of judgment and stuff, you know. So yeah, so and then of course like because he mentioned like Babylon, I guess it's kind of in the biblical sense where it's like this, you know, city of ruin and stuff like that. I use like kind of this classical architecture, and then that's a Lamassu up there, which is a Babylonian in some senses a demon. And then just to throw it in there because I love Thelema and Aleister Crowley and stuff like that. Lady Babylon in the back there, which is Babylon with an A, not a Y. But I love I've drawn Lady Babylon a bunch.
Is that the head that's kind of peeking through there? Yeah.
So she's like, if you look down, you can kind of see her spine go along the edge, and then she's like looking at you from afar. So
I love how like subtle it is. I didn't even notice that for a while.
Well, yeah, you know, I wanted to make something that like. I always try to like make stuff that makes you keep looking at it, you know, because if you keep looking at the cover, you know, you're going to spend more time with it. And maybe that makes you check out the album. So even if you don't know the band, you check out the album and you like look at it for a while, you know, compels you to check it out. And I really try to pride myself on bringing attention to the bands that I work with because they mean a lot to me, you know. Y'all are helping me pay my mortgage. So like, I want to help you guys out too. So yeah, no, this is one of my favorite covers of all time. I mean, this is all my favorite covers I've ever done are not out yet, but this is one that luckily has come out and I'm really proud of it. Yeah.
I love I feel like you did like the ripping through kind of breaking the third wall like so well. And the breaking of the frame where you can still see the column architecture, you know, kind of peek through as like you know, kind of like you know, blood drips, like something like that. Like, dude, that's so cool. I feel like you just got the motion so well in this one. It's very lively. There's nothing stiff about this one. It's really exceptional.
I'm really happy you caught that. That was kind of the idea where it's like, you know, you kind of I always try to kind of like, what's the story, you know? You can imagine maybe that like you've got this, I don't know, maybe this is upon death, you know, and you just see nothing but red. And then you see a stain start to appear from the other side. And then, you know, something gets closer and closer and then rips on through and then brings you in. Because there's this whole line where it's like hands reaching out and pulling you in. So that was a huge factor on this cover.
So cool.
Thank you, man. I'm happy with that. Fuck yeah. Oh, I love these. Yeah. Okay, you want me to just go in on these guys?
Oh, please. And can you, for the viewers, the bands too, because I didn't put them down, and I'm blanking on the names of the bands.
Yeah, no. So this is Voimatan, this first one. They're based in Chicago, and they're a really awesome death metal band. Underground. I mean, a lot of the bands that work with underground, which, I mean, not to go off on a little side tangent here, but I really like to work both. Like the fact that I do stuff with like Ghost is cool, but I like having my hand in like both sides, so that there are people who see big bands like Ghost, but they're not familiar with underground bands, and then all of a sudden they're drawn to underground bands,
And vice versa.
and vice versa. Yeah. So like, because I do think it's all one big happy family in my eyes. So I don't know. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just don't spend too much time on Reddit, then you can keep that sentiment.
We try to be, at least. We try to be. I don't know. I just try to be.
Hey, I'm with you. I like the spirit.
Let me grab the original. So this one's actually pretty big. Well, not huge, but there you go. Check it out.
That's big. That's big.
Yeah, it's about 20 by 20, something like that. 24 by 24. Yeah, I still haven't framed it, but
so you then darken that one digitally and put all those finishing touches on it, basically.
Yeah, the original sketch was a lot darker, and they really wanted this like dingy, like moldy, gross effect of it. And yeah, there's this whole thing of like, I don't know. I to me personally, it's almost like this power imbalance of like you have this Greek god in the background and he's cranking a wheel, and that's supposed to be Athena right there, where like the marble is stripping away and rotting and turning to paper, and then there's this eye of. To be perfectly honest, I could give you the whole breakdown of it, but I don't remember. I do put a lot of thought into the narratives and stuff with these things, but like that's kind of the general vibe where this was like, I don't know, flesh is being ground into dust by this cosmic wheel. That's okay. I remember now. So yeah, you see the wheel. It's being cranked by this big guy back here, and then Athena's corpse is rotting because, again, it's unjust, and out of the eye in the cosmic wheel keeps birthing new people, and then they just immediately fall down and get ground into dust by the wheel, and then that creates the big dust that goes all around, and then the guy in the back, I based him on a real guy. I can't remember. Damn it. But he's inhaling the smoke, so it's just like kind of the perpetuation of suffering, even though he could technically just stop cranking the wheel.
Got it.
So it's that general vibe. But Profane Vestige is a banger album. It is filthy. I recommend anyone check out Profane Vestige by Voimatan. They also have, I believe they have CD and vinyl on their Bandcamp as well. Personal Records put that out. I think it's on the Personal Records Bandcamp.
Nice.
Yeah. Good. I mean, initially it was a little lighter, but I wanted to keep it a little truer to the sketch. It printed a little darker, which, but yeah, no, I'm really happy with how that one. That was a quick turnaround. That was like, we put that out, and then within a few months, I feel like that album came out, which is kind of rare these days, especially with vinyl production. You know what I mean?
I like how, graphic everything is. Like in the sense of, I mean, there's some aspects of symmetry. You even have some 2-point perspective in terms of like how it juts out, and then the way you did like all the smoke clouds and stuff, the color variation, but then also the actual shape design kind of has like a graphic quality I really like.
Thanks. Yeah, I love rendering smoke that way, and the way the way that the monoprint lays down, it kind of lends itself to it. You kind of have to find those forms. This is one of those covers where it's like literally every inch it's covered with some kind of detail, which I usually don't do because I like to give some negative space. But this is one where I was like,
of it.
Yeah. I just wanted this to be suffocating. You know what I mean? Like they really wanted this like suffocating, overwhelming effect, and it feels dingy and like you're kind of choking looking at it, which that was kind of the intention at least.
Yeah. Let's talk about this one on the right here.
Hell yeah. So this is an awesome, this is one of my all-timers as well, because this is Palette Veil, which is a single that Total Dissonance Worship put out. Well, actually, rewind a little bit. This was a song that was commissioned for Metal Injection's Slay at Home Fest.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so you have Dave Davidson, Elliot Hoffman, Luke LeMay, and oh gosh, who's the last one? Liam Wilson. So you got members of Gorguts, Revocation, you got members of Gorguts, Revocation, Carbomb, and Dillinger Escape Plan, all collaborating on one song, which is like stupidly big brain. I mean, stupid in a good way. It's yeah, but it's an awesome track. And Dave Davidson had reached out to me on Instagram, and he had said that like, hey, we're putting out Total Dissonance wants to press a 7-inch of this song, and we need a cover for it because there was no cover. It was just that video on YouTube. And of course, I remember going on. I remember when it came out, but then it's like if you go to the comments on it, I mean, maybe it's changed now since this has come out, but everyone was like, why isn't this a thing? Why can't I listen to this anywhere? Why isn't this pressed? So Total Dissonance kind of came in and did that. Simon at Total Dissonance is a really awesome guy. He's in Nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Who's also, they're playing with Zach, who is also in Asatus, is their drummer. So there's a little bit of a crossover there.
And that over here. I feel like, Nightmare, Deformity, and Drift. That album rules. That just came out this year, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Really cool cover, too.
Yeah, it is. It's cool how it's kind of a continuation of, there's one of their previous covers has that same like weird twisted figure on it. And I always like that kind of through line, But anyway, yeah, so Dave kind of just let me run with this one, which I really appreciated. And there wasn't a lot of changes that happened with this. He was just kind of like, hey man, here's the lyrics, run with it. I gave him a sketch for this. He's like, yup, approved. And yeah, it's always cool when that happens because don't get me wrong, I have no problem tweaking stuff with bands because they're the one buying it, But this was one where it's like, I don't know. It's just cool to be able to make something that involved that amount of insanely talented musicians. It was like fucking Gorguts, it's holy shit. Like Dillinger Escape and Carbomb, Revocation, those are all bands I love. So it's cool to make this. It was weird thing that happened where they're all together somehow. And it's not this Janus head where basically, I remember Dave saying, he wrote it during the pandemic, kind of felt like he was suffocating in his own environment, something like that. But it's because it's it's kind of these just general thoughts of like despair and stuff like that in the lyrics if you read them. And which if you get the 7-inch, I also did layout on that as well. So, but yeah, so we have this idea of like this figure, and he's kind of burning up. He's kind of trapped in his own head or in his own space, whether you want that to be literal or physical, literal or
metaphorical or something.
Yeah, metaphorical or figurative. That's your own way, but it's like this idea of it's a Janus head, which is a motif that's been around forever, and it's one head that sees into the past and one head that sees into the future. So you have this old, more mature face on the left that's seeing into the past, but its eyes are being plucked out. And then the face of the future kind of knows its fate, and because its eyes are about to be plucked out as well. So, yeah, it's pretty depressing in concept, but I don't know if it's got pretty colors, So
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, shout out to you, Dave and Simon.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And this is the last slide.
Sweet. Yeah. So Imperial Triumphant, I talked about a little bit. Zachary Ezrin, who's their guitarist and singer growler, he's fun to work with. He's again, they're those guys. They just have such a strong core brand about them. They obviously have the masks and are very centered around this concept of like New York City, and they want to embody the sounds of New York City. Which I went to New York City when I was like 4. Haven't been since, but I'm glad that they trust I'm glad they trust some guy in rural Georgia making art for them. So,
Yeah.
thank you guys. But yeah, I mean, they're all. I mean, that is a trio that's just like so freaking talented. You got, I mean, Kenny is an amazing drummer.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and that's a band that like truly none of them like. Not, I mean, being a trio, it's something that I admire. It's easier to do as a trio, but at the same time, nobody really commands the stage for themselves when you see them. Mm-hmm. Have you seen them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw them open up for Immolation.
Awesome. Yeah, I missed that tour. I saw them when they headlined shortly after that in February of this year. Mm-hmm. I saw them at Bob.
Oh, you went to that show?
Yeah.
Damn. I wish I went. I would have met you there.
Yeah.
I was on the fence because a couple of my friends were going.
Well, I was talking to the guys when they were there. So if you had approached the guys, you might have talked to me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, what's cool about them, and I guess this is just music. I mean, we're here to talk about music too. So, what I love about them is nobody really nobody takes it. They're all like, you can just bounce between looking at each one of them and just be totally, I guess, overstimulated in a good way.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Zach is an insane guitarist and vocalist. And I always love his voice, too, because it sounds like some evil, dystopian ruler who's you are poor, you will be ground into the gears. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like this evil, it almost feels like this fictional character when I was.
It kind of reminds me of Portal a little bit vocally.
Yeah, well, I know Portal's a huge influence. I could go off on Portal. I love Portal, but yeah, man, how they just make up words. I love that. It just totally makes up words. But yeah, no, the dissonant stuff, just that whole realm of, I mean, yeah. But what's cool about them though is I love how they all individually each command the stage when they play. It's like, and then Steve is a madman live. Yeah. The way he just runs around and just goes crazy on that bass. I mean, he's one of the most talented bassists.
Well, he goes into the crowd and stuff, right?
Yeah,
no. Masquerade, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're just. I mean, I could go off about all of them because they're all just so fucking talented. But what I do like about working with them is they have their really strong brand, and you don't mistake them for anyone else. That is something for Imperial Triumphant, obviously because of the masks and the New York City, and everything is usually gold, which I love because that's my favorite color. But also the fact that they really just they trust their artists. They choose their artists deliberately, and they've had. It's like they've also worked with Andrew Tremblay, Zbigniew Bielak. I don't remember who did their last cover, which had the photograph on it with all that stuff. But Spirit of Ecstasy, which was amazing. They're all good. All their albums are crazy, and they keep evolving. But this was a thing where I think I did this this was 2020, and and then the pandemic just kept on pushing this tour off over and over again. So. The amount of times I changed dates on this thing, because I just sent you the one that didn't have dates on it because I just figured it didn't matter. But it went for 2 years with them changing dates, and we ended up doing a version with Black Marble as well because they split the tour up. But yeah, no, I also did a shirt design for them not that long ago. Well, actually, at this point it was a while ago. So losing track of time here. If I could find it. It's that came out with Spirit of Ecstasy. I'm big on my props here. Let's see.
Is it black and white by any chance?
It's black, white, and gold. Yeah. Here you go.
See. Oh wow, that's incredible.
Got some good details in there. It's the state. It's the seal of New York City. And it's but we've dramatically changed it.
Here, let me blow you up. That's remarkable, man. Wow.
The other one I got hanging up in the living room, the tour poster, but this one I haven't. I keep on going to try and get an 18x24 frame for this, and they keep not having it. So
yeah, you got to protect that.
Yeah, no. But yeah, it's the seal of New York City. But we kind of obviously added a bunch of stuff to it. But they're just so cool because they're like, we trust the style and the process of the artists we work with, and it always turns out cool because you get a lot of variation on the same thing and I think it builds the brand. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So I'm really grateful for being able to work with them. They're really cool. That was one where I was like, it was kind of, again, it was an affirming moment because when I did that tour poster, I mean, it was probably, it's just a gig. It would feel like, but Alphaville was my favorite album that year. So the fact that I got to make something for someone who had put out my favorite album that year was like, okay, again, I'm on the younger side, but to be affirming myself this early on, it helps, it helps kind of bring that confidence because I know I gab a lot and, I'm definitely not cocky because I don't always have a lot of faith in myself. I think a lot of artists don't have a lot of faith in themselves, but sometimes every once in a while, something like that happens and you're like, okay, you need to remind yourself that you are worth what you're worth something,
Yeah.
Every artist is worth something. And, it's easy to forget that. So oftentimes working with them, I think just because of how respectful they are, like with the artwork and everything and how deliberate they are, I always have one of those moments. It's very special. So thank you guys.
That's great to hear, man.
Yeah.
And then, can you pronounce the name of the band again? I don't want to say it wrong.
You good. Acetus. Acetas. Some people say acetus. I don't think it's acetus. I think it's acetas or I do the D thing and say acetus. But Gage, when they're guitarist, Gage, he always says acetas when we're on the phone. So
it just feels like an incantation when you say it that way.
Yeah, well, that's the cool thing. So these guys, ride or die. That is who these guys are to me. It's like I kind of touched on them a little bit earlier and how I kind of knew them a little bit in high school, and then we had spent a lot of time kind of apart doing our own things, and then he came back to me Gage came back to me and was like, hey, we like some of the stuff you're doing. And it was actually some early experimental stuff with that technique, that monoprint technique, where I was just screwing around with designs. And they had bought 3 of them as single covers, which I should have included here. But if you go on their page, if you check them out, you'll find them. So, yeah, they had done. So for this is a really long album. This is like, I want to say it's almost an hour 20. It's a double LP. So, we got a cool gatefold here.
They have a cool logo. Very unique.
Yeah, thank you. I did it.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Yes. But basically, this is the album that really got me into working with bands. There's like some stuff I had done before, but nothing that had really like led to other work. They had seen those things I was experimenting with. It was just some random pieces. They weren't really illustrations. It was more just like fine art messing around. And they wanted to use them. So I was like, well, okay, maybe there's some credence to this process. And and by then I had gotten a little more faith, but I was in different areas because I had been working with Fangoria magazine. And they have their like Chainsaw Awards thing. And I had just done like the logo or thing for that. They don't use it anymore. But so I was kind of like, maybe that's the area I'm in, like the horror stuff, but it's very broad. And I think the community is a lot more, I feel a bigger sense of community personally with like the metal stuff. And with this, that's how that started, because they bought those designs off of me to use as single covers. And then they were like, we guess we got to commission an album cover too, And Gage, of course, he spares no expense on the art. I mean, he's like, the visual part is extremely important to us. So yeah, this big thing actually happened because this is kind of the reason I chose to keep going with this. And this is what's gotten me a lot of work. So Yeah, if we kind of zoom in, you can see some stuff there. But yeah, this is kind of a concept of like, there's these people in this outdoor sermon in this valley, and they're worshiping this statue, but then the statue starts eking out of its neck. And I do a lot of heads, not on necks, if you don't notice.
I see that, yeah.
But yeah, no, and then yeah, it's like this goo comes out, and almost like this void. It like drips void out of it, and then these demons come out of the void. And originally, it had no demons, but Gage was like, "We want demons ripping heads off," so I added the demons ripping heads off. So yeah, and what's cool, what I'll say about stuff to come from Mercedes is, yeah, a lot of it is a continuation. Like, how I kind of mentioned, like how I liked how that Nightmare cover, it had that one kind of figure featured on it that was on one of the previous releases. That's very much what we're going with the Sadist. Is future releases, there is kind of, I've chosen and I've run it by them, and they liked the idea of it, of continuing almost this narrative. It's loose, but their next album will be, you get sucked into this void. Where does that void go to? And then after that, which, newsflash, we have already made artwork for the album after that. Because they've kind of been recording both albums at the same time, because they spent a lot of time, not recording, and then they really, anyway, things are kind of solidifying now. So it's like, all right, well, we did this thing of like kind of the world gets undone on this album. Now, all these people are getting sucked into this kind of like, I don't know, this cave-like void. And like, well, where do they fall into? So from there, these guys are dragging all these heads in, and what does that place look like? On the other side, it's just like blackness. We have a reverse version of it, so it's almost it's almost like you're looking through the album. But yeah, where do you get dumped after you get sucked out of this reality? And that's where we go to in the next album, and that has like, let me count how many pieces we're doing for that. Because again, I got some approval from Gage, so I'm allowed to talk about this. I always worry that I'm like speaking out of turn, but yeah. All right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7. Okay, so not 8, but we have 7 pieces for the next album. Wow. So it's going to be, we just want to go all out with it. Their music it's wild. I mean, if you haven't checked it out, I would check it out, because it is some intense stuff. This album starts out, and it's like this weird, bizarre electronic thumping with screaming, and
I need to listen to it. It sounds like we have very similar taste.
Yeah, man.
Kind of all over the map, but like I like the dissonant, crazy stuff. I also like poppy shit too. So
yeah, no. I mean, why not, right? Why pigeonhole yourself? I mean, I say that there's a lot of genres I don't gravitate towards, but I think within this realm, there's so many places you can go, and why not at least try all of them,
100%.
Yeah. So yeah, be on the lookout, because I mean, the stuff coming from Mercedes is like, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's so much us, it's so much like Gage and Nathan and Zach and Travis, and they're all just ridiculously talented guys, and they have spent a lot of time building up to their next release, and it's going to be something. I've heard all the demos for it, and actually, I've heard the rough mixes for it, so it's going to be something really special. It's I don't know. I think they made some waves with this one. I think they're going to make a lot of waves with their next one, personally, nice. And that next album is very personal to me, and I'm excited to kind of talk about the artwork when it comes out. And there's a gazillion albums that are not out yet, but which I'd love to talk about.
That's why we got to have you back on for a panel, man.
Yeah, man. Sweet, yeah. It's cool. Yeah, I mean, I think I say that. I think every work is personal. It's hard to make something that ain't personal. By the end of it, you spent so much time with it. You learn something, not just about I think you learn something about yourself with everything you make. Personally, I don't know about you, but sometimes it's very surface level. Sometimes it's bigger than that. And yeah, it's cool.
I could definitely relate. Well, hey, getting towards the 3-hour mark. I got one last question for you, and we've touched on it, throughout the course of this conversation. But what are some pieces or your biggest piece of advice for an aspiring artist or illustrator who wants to make stuff commercially, perhaps in the metal scene, perhaps the stuff adjacent to it, horror, surreal, or just stuff that's a little, off the beaten path?
Yeah, I mean, I would say don't just keep making stuff just make stuff that feels right. Make original stuff. Don't just make fan art. Because fan art's cool, but make your own stuff. What's in your head? Just put it on paper or canvas or your screen if you work digitally. It doesn't matter. I don't know. I've never gone wrong with just making something. You know what I mean? You make it, you put it out there. Maybe not 1,000 people or see it, but maybe the one right person will see it. You know what I mean? And because it gets harder nowadays with the sometimes algorithmically things get a little. It was easier when I started, but so I won't say it's not tough, but and don't be afraid to reach out to bands. It's that's how my collaboration started with Ghost and Imperial Triumphant. I was just I found a way to get in touch with them, and you know what? I mean, it's cliche, but you miss all the shots you didn't take. So
Wayne Gretzky over here.
Yep, Wayne Gretzky, and but it's true. I mean, you say it all the time. I mean, you hear it all the time, but it's I really had just thought, well, I can't do that. It's I mean, band like Ghost, I just assumed, that's huge. It feels so unreachable. But, if you just keep working at it and make sure you give them something you're proud of, if it's just something tiny that is whatever, you're never going to be totally sure about the stuff you make. I'm not, but sometimes a shot in the dark, it turns out more often times than not, it can. So, I really encourage that, and just put yourself
how do you
out
think?
there.
What about you were talking earlier too? Not to lead you too much here, but being self-aware of where you're at in your journey too. Like you mentioned earlier, I reached out to Ghost. Looking back, it was too early. Or
Absolutely.
So it's that's the other thing too is if you don't get the gigs from just doing some cold emailing or messaging. Which shouldn't be frowned upon. In time, it'll all sort itself out if you have that persistence, both in your trying to get ahead, but then also trying to advance your art skills. Persistence is key in both.
Absolutely. I mean, what I would say is, and I'm not telling you to pester people with emails, but a no is a no for now, So, I mean, I have personally experienced that when I've been told no, but years later I've gone back and I've gotten work. So, you never truly know where you're at in your journey, but sometimes when you look around and say you've gotten a few things under your belt that you're really proud of, and, it's, hey, why not? But then again, that first gig could be that thing you reach out for. Who knows? But if it's not, that's okay, because personally, I think as an artist, you can only go up. It's what are you gonna get worse? No, you keep doing it. You're gonna get better.
I can only think of a few artists who have gotten worse, and I won't mention them. They're not anyone. Yeah. They're like famous people. They have nothing to do with the scene.
I get what you mean, though. Yeah.
Well, cool.
Awesome.
Noah, it was a real pleasure, man. And the fact that you're also in Georgia, I'm sure we're going to see each other at some point. So that's
absolutely.
Really cool.
I'll let you know if I'm going to any Atlanta shows. And, if you wind up going too, I'll hope to see you there.
Yeah, likewise. For anybody watching, please subscribe, share. New episodes every other Thursday. That's the release schedule I've been doing. And until next time, thank you all. Really appreciate it.